OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Alrighty then. What's this? These are the steel shots. I guess it's...
Callum Robinson's done it again! Deflected shot from the edge of the area, straight into the back of the net. So Callum Robinson against Michel Barsham, down to our right-hand side, in front of that large group of Republic of Ireland supporters. Robinson, right-footed, into the back of the net, low down to the left-hand side. Callum Robinson on the double once again. Republic of Ireland 2, Qatar 0, and there's not even 13 minutes on the clock. It's Jeff Hendrick, slides it through to Robinson, chance for Robinson, hat-trick for Callum Robinson. What a beautiful goal from the Republic of Ireland. They must have strung 20-25 passes together, the most patient of build-up. Conor Howard takes it, outswinger, Duffy goes up, and Duffy scores. The Ireland captain makes it 4-0 before the hour mark. Conor Howard's corner kick, and Shane Duffy rose highest on the edge of the 6-yard box, heads it down into the ground. He loves a goal for the Republic of Ireland, and he's got his 6th in this, his 49th cap. And what a night it's turning out to be for this Irish team. Republic of Ireland 4, Qatar 0.
Yeah, 4-0. That's how it finished in our beautiful, beautiful blue jerseys with the amazing crest. What's that face for, Kenny?
No, I agree with you.
You do? Oh, finally.
I thought you come up with a better adjective than beautiful. Like I was waiting for the big punch.
No, that's it.
It was a bit underwhelming, right?
What would you have gone for?
It was punchy though, the jersey, wasn't it? I don't know what I was expecting. I wasn't expecting that shade of blue. I'm not sure what I pictured in my head. But when I saw it, kind of rocked me a little bit.
So I think it should be our away jersey. People are saying the white jersey has to be for a clash of colours and all that kind of stuff. But like, use it when we can. Bring it in, bring it back. It's cool.
Oh man, away. Let's stick with it. We're on a roll. Green's overrated.
Whenever I see a new jersey, I go onto Twitter just to make sure that it is nice, because we've had this conversation before. I never know if a jersey is nice or not. But everybody was in agreement last night.
What I didn't like, I was looking down from the stand at the lads lining up for the anthems, and I don't think the orange boots sit too well with the right. It was just Andrew Omobamidele had the blue boots with the kit.
Nice.
Oh, nice.
Sharp.
He knows what he's doing.
Sharp, yeah. The lads everybody's just got to roll it out.
A step ahead on and off the field, our Andrew. Right, look, we are basking in a bit of glory this morning. I just want to bring you this. Kieran Cunningham tweeted this last night. Against Georgia 4 years ago, Ireland made just 79 passes in the first half. There were 38 passes in the build-up to Callum Robinson's third goal tonight. 1.9 thousand likes on Twitter for Kieran Cunningham's tweet. We played good football last night. We're not getting carried away.
Oh, Jay, come on,
We're not getting carried away.
Away from the old good football debate. No, I enjoyed the performance. I enjoyed the performance.
But it was good football with the result. Because the knock on Kenny was, what's the point of this? There's no end product. And now there's end product and good football. And the crowd shows up.
Yeah, it was good football. The jerseys
look good.
Yeah, you're right. It was good football because we mixed up our game, didn't we? We got on the ball, we made passes, we got the ball back to front early. We got the ball in behind them, we turned them, we put crosses into the box. So it was difficult to pigeonhole that performance as, it was just like a possession-based, just looking to keep the ball and slowly move up the field. We mixed it up well for me. We actually played smart football which I enjoy watching the team playing. So it was good decision-making for me from people in possession. You know, we went backwards and sideways and we had to maintain possession, but we hit the front men at times early. We went down the sides in behind them, the pace of Chiadozie Ogbene in that first half, Jamie McGrath, who's quick in his feet. Interesting, the dynamic between the front three, I thought it worked really well. Callum Robinson playing that central striking position, dropping off the front into those kind of deep pockets. The likes of Chiadozie then and Jamie McGrath looking to drive into the space in behind. Jeff linking up well from that central midfield area. So there's really a lot of positives from the performance in possession of the football, like you're saying. You know, creating chances, looking like a goal threat, scored more goals. Yeah, it was really good. Really exciting performance in that respect.
Yeah.
I know we've got Nathan on the line, so we might just throw this to him. But last night kind of felt like the most positive night at the Aviva. I'm not saying that we're getting carried away with the result in terms of the opposition, but the most positive mood at the Aviva since maybe the playoff win against Bosnia. I know you've worked at both games, Nathan, so I'm not sure what your take on that was.
It was definitely a night to remember atmosphere wise. They've done a lot around the Aviva, I think, in terms of the pyrotechnics and all that to build an atmosphere before the game. But the fact it was the sellout, the fact there was over 25,000 people there, and it was Qatar, and it's a Tuesday night in October. If there was a reason not to go, there were plenty of them last night. But you sensed that when the team came out, when Stephen Kenny came out, that the fans wanted to show Stephen Kenny that they are behind him, that they do believe what he's doing. But I think everyone feels the same thing. They believe what he's doing, but he needs results. And last night they got it, and it was a really effective performance in terms of the style of play. As Kenny said, it was noticeable at times. They were very calm, I thought, at the back. They slowed it down when they wanted to slow it down. They weren't afraid to go long at times and try and stretch Qatar and put them on the back foot. And there was a proper cohesiveness, probably with the exception of maybe 20 minutes before half-time, where the midfield sort of lost the run of itself and Hendrick and Hourihan went missing a little bit. And it's not really either of their gigs, that sort of holding role. But the fact that from the first 30 seconds, of Bene, when he won that free kick in the first 30 seconds, the crowd were into it. And there was an intensity from the performance that was sort of unrelenting, which means they're the nights that, as supporters, you love. And I know, Kenny, don't want to talk really about styles of football or the right style of football or the wrong style of football or all that. But I think that intensity is what fans want more than anything else when they go and watch Ireland. And it's what's been lacking over the last few years, that it's been dull. It has been dull. Friendlies are generally dull, but even the competitive games, not a lot happens. Ireland stand off a little bit. The other team has the ball, whereas they got at them last night. And then they tried to do the right thing, and they scored that goal that Callum Robinson scored to complete his hat-trick was an exceptional goal with the patience that Ireland showed. The Shane Duffy is the one. Just before that bit of commentary, I think I said that all 10 Irish outfield players within 40, 45 yards of the Qatari goal. Shane Duffy just skips around the player. He's confident because he's the other two centre halves there to do it. Plays a nice little ball, and he continues his run is the thing.
Yeah.
Shane Duffy then is the furthest Irish player forward, makes almost a decoy run, and it's just a perfectly way to pass from Jeff Hendrick, who's had one of his best nights in an Ireland jersey. The finish from Callum Robinson, and who knows what goes on at board level, but I think last night and the last 3 days will have gone a long way towards securing Stephen Kenny's future.
And rightly so. Now, here's the thing. We still... my main problem with us having to talk about giving Kenny the new contract over the last while was that we didn't actually get to talk about the games and the football itself. Now we're going to get, hopefully, to talk about the games and the football itself and the evolution in the style and where we're getting to. There's still issues, Kenny, right? Qatar created a fair few chances on the break without actually troubling the goalkeeper that much. They could have, with better forwards or better midfielders, have shot and scored against us. So this is something that we need to work on, that continuing issue that we have there.
Yeah, I think that's the one caveat. I think the defensive setup in this particular team over the past two games hasn't been kind of stress tested by the quality of the opposition, but that was a pretty miserable performance last night from Qatar. They really surprised me, actually. I was expecting a lot more from them. That said, that's not the takeaway from the Irish performance, but yeah, I'm very interested in terms of the performance against Portugal on the flip side, really, in terms of how strong that defensive setup is, because if there is a small worry over the course of the past two games, it's in terms of just maybe our defensive qualities, particularly in that kind of central area of the pitch, and not just the central midfield but collectively as a unit, in terms of how strong we're going to be. Can we absorb pressure for longer periods of time against far superior opposition, which Portugal will be, and to a certain extent Luxembourg in that final away game. I'm not exactly convinced of it at the moment for the reasons you said, Jerry. Just getting caught on transition a number of times over in Azerbaijan, and even last night on a couple of occasions just kind of vacating that central midfield area, which is understandable because you got some of the likes of Jeff Hendrick, who for me you don't want to hold him in that central midfield area. You want to let him go and join up with the front three. He's so productive in the final tour, such a good technical player, which we saw last night in abundance. So you actually want to encourage him to get himself a little bit higher up the pitch. That puts a huge amount of responsibility on the shoulders of the other central midfield player. And in Conor Hourihan, for me, again, I don't see somebody who's a naturally holding central midfield player. I think he wants to drop in there at times and spray passes and get our passing going, which I think he can do. I think his distribution is the best that we have in that central midfield there, actually better than Josh Cullen in that respect. But as a comparison to Josh Cullen, I think he's very more tigerish in the tackle. He brings more of a physical element to that central midfield. Josh Cullen, in terms of getting around, making tackles, making interceptions, more of a defensive mindset. So that'll be interesting in terms of how Stephen Kenny sees it, that kind of partnership, if it is going to be a partnership for the game against Portugal, if he's going to go with the front three and a midfield pairing who he feels best complement each other in that central midfield
If Cullen's
area.
fit, Cullen plays. He's his first choice, right? So it'll be Cullen +1. Is there any possibility that actually Hendrick plays in the McGrath role, and that's, for games like Portugal?
No, I think Jeff looked at ease in that area of the pitch when we were in possession of the football.
He's a number 8.
Yeah, he is. We're going to play. We're going to play as a 2. Yeah, whatever number you want to put at him. But I just feel as if we've got to be realistic in terms of what we can expect of Jeff out of possession. He's not going to be the type to get around and make tackle after tackle.
Okay, so that's why you have McGrath in the team.
Well, yeah, I think it's what happens around Jeff when you haven't got the ball. And I think if you have Jamie McGrath, I'm not agree with you. I think Jamie McGrath's pushed himself into the reckoning for a start against Portugal in one of those front 3 positions. Callum Robinson, another. The debate may well be who's going to have that third position. Will Eimear come straight back into the team centrally? Callum Robinson off one side and maybe Jamie McGrath. You could see that potentially as a front 3 of the game against Portugal. But I think it's collectively how you make Jeff's performance last night. For me, you're looking at it, and we haven't seen that type of performance from Jeff Nathan, have we, for quite some time. The last 2 games we've been crying out for it. People keep referencing back to 2016, but it does seem that long. It's far too long for a player of his ability, and he's put a type of performance in the last 2 games, particularly last night, where you look at him now, Jeff, and you think, right, he's got to stay in the team. We've got to keep him in the team, but we have to kind of protect him a little bit when we haven't got the ball. So that'll be the challenge for the management staff in terms of when we lose possession, how do we get players around Jeff to a certain extent and just protect them, and have a really solid kind of defensive base from which to work from. It might mean we actually take a step back. We play more of a lower defensive block. We get the likes of Jamie McGrath, Callum Robinson in those wide positions and get them to drop in alongside Josh Cullen and Jeff Hendrick in a real kind of narrow midfield 4, and that offers a lot more protection to our kind of midfield too. So now you've got a back 5 unit, you got a narrow midfield 4 in front.
That's what we'll do in a game against Portugal where we're going to have 30% possession.
Yeah, well, I think so. You have to respect the opposition. You have to respect the fact that you have to factor in terms of the qualities of the previous 2 teams we played. You can't be blind to the fact that maybe the small weaknesses that we saw in those 2 games.
How does that tally with the desire to press, which is the thing I think that is kind of innate in us? We want to go and push forward and we want to attack.
Yeah, but you might have to temper that. Because like I'm saying, you say go and press. So press with the system at the moment, you got to send your front 3 players really high up the pitch to go after the opposition defensive line if they're looking to play out. Now, good teams will make little angles, a little combination, and work the ball in around that front 3. And once you get past their front 3, which you've seen in previous games, that really exposes now your central 2 midfield players. They've really got to shuffle across the pitch and do a lot of kind of doggy work. There's a lot of defensive responsibility there, and I'm not too sure that Jeff and Josh Cullen punishment centre midfield, I think that's too much of a stress for them. So for me, the argument would be maybe not such a high press game against Portugal. Maybe drop into a lower defensive blocks, keep those number 10s, whoever they be, Callum Robinson or Jamie McGrath, Darrell Horgan, whoever they might be, drop them back into a deeper defensive shape and maybe look to sacrifice a little bit more possession.
Yeah, I understand that. I do, and I can see how that would be the debate. The only thing is that we're trying to build this style where we are a high press, high energy.
Yeah, but well, don't get fixated on the style we're talking about. What was our percentage against Azerbaijan? What was our possession percentage? 36%. Was it? Don't get fixated on. We've got to have a possession base.
No, I'm not fixated on possession. I'm fixated on the press. Yeah,
we don't have to be a high press.
But the press creates the chances. We turn over in a high.
Yeah, but you can create chances from a. The press can come 10 yards outside your penalty box. The press doesn't have to come 10 yards outside the opposition penalty box. Yeah, you could argue that's ideal because if you win it back 10 yards outside the opposition penalty box, smaller distance, you've got to travel to the opposition goal and get a shot on target. Yeah. But there's an element of risk to that. This is what I'm talking about. There's an element of risk to operate that kind of high press.
Is the long-term reward for trying this against Portugal in a pressurised situation, is the long-term reward for that better than actually, because we know we can.
It doesn't have to be one or the other, Jay. It doesn't have to be one or the other. Like I said, it's just good decisions, having the team set up, being tactically astute. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Lads, you call it yourselves at that particular moment in the game. If we're going to go a little bit braver, higher press, everybody's got to come up the pitch. That means our back 5 have to get up to the halfway line. That nice compact defensive shape. Yeah, let's go at them. Are we going to have a little bit of joy if they play through us one or two occasions? Do we recognise that and then drop into that kind of lower defence? That's interesting for me. That's not any type of criticism. That's just as I'm seeing it going down the road against stronger opposition who we're going to be playing against.
I wonder, was one of the things, Kenny, the fact that Portugal basically didn't have a midfield against Ireland in the first time. It might be a little bit unfair in the 2 that they played there, but they had 4 attackers on the pitch. Like, if I recall correctly, that they had Bernardo Silva starting, they had Jota starting, they had Ronaldo starting. They'd one other starting who I'm forgetting right now, but they definitely had 4 attackers. Go on, Nathan. Bruno Fernandes, sorry, of course. So it was essentially a situation where the Irish midfield weren't going to be outnumbered in that situation, and maybe that's poor management from Portugal to not see that. Maybe they got off the hook a little bit in that regard, and their midfield kind of survived that way.
Yeah, but that's when you got to be bright. You got to be intelligent. Players got to recognise that in the pitch. You got to see those pictures on the pitch, and they've got to take responsibility. You can't always be looking to the touchline to your manager and coach and staff. Oh, they've changed. He's playing. We weren't expecting him to play. They've tweaked their formation. What do we do? Do we press? Do we not? And that's when you kind of game intelligence really comes into it. Players recognising the situation, what's in front of them, and actually organising things themselves on the pitch.
Well, is there a case for the Portugal game that actually Hendrick doesn't play, and that you play Jason Knight and Josh Cullen, and suddenly you've got high energy there non-stop? And
I think it's an argument for, I'm talking about tweaking it, I think it's an argument maybe for playing a narrow midfield 3 against Portugal and sacrificing one of those front 3 and going with a central 2.
Okay, so who'd that be? You stick Knight instead of McGrath?
Yeah, potentially. So, absolutely. Yeah, that could be an argument. Jamie
McGrath, maybe McGrath plays. I don't know. He
can play as a number 10. But I've seen Jamie McGrath, when I've seen him play League of Ireland football, he can play as a 10 just behind the central striker as well. So what I'm saying, that's actually quite exciting for me. That's not a kind of negative now. I don't want this to turn into a big kind of a negative spiel. It's not. It's actually quite exciting for me because we're working. Nothing's changing at the back. We got that solid defensive 3. We got our 2 wing backs. That's kind of set in stone now. And now we kind of build from that, and we can make 1 or 2 little alterations ahead of that and tweak a couple of little things. And fundamentally, the whole shape of the thing doesn't really change. The kind of style of football that you're talking about, philosophy, whatever you want to call it, that doesn't necessarily have to change either. You're just making small little adjustments depending on what you're facing at any particular time, and that can change during the course of the game at any moment in time. Players can make those small adjustments themselves.
Yeah. Nathan, what was the post match like? What was the general sense? And cause, I mean, the vibe around the team was incredibly negative when we were in the midst of COVID. They couldn't train with each other. Players were sitting in the wrong seat in the plane. All of a sudden the HSE were ringing saying you can't play that player in a big match, and it was a disaster. It was a real complete shit show, and it looked like there was a stench of doom around the place. I presume that has transformed.
Absolutely, and Conor Hourhan was out after the game talking about how it was probably the most enjoyable game he played in an Ireland jersey because of the amount of touches he got, how you were always getting on the ball, and that's, as a midfielder, what you want, and too often he probably hasn't had that opportunity. And I think Hourhan's an example of, in a way, how Stephen Kenny's been fortunate with the senior players he's had in the squad, who are all really good professionals, who were never really going to turn on him, whether it's Seamus Coleman, Shane Duffy, James McLean, Conor Hourhan, who I think probably kept that ship just on and would kept it away from sinking over the last year, because if any of them had come out and sort of expressed concerns publicly or shown any cracks within the camp, it would have been a huge deal. But I don't think with those 4 in particular that was ever going to happen. And I think there has been a transformation over this last week. When you think last week we were, in the depths of Callum Robinson's press conference, and you wondered what was going to happen over the following days. The squad seemed to have come together. After that, they've come out and protected their mate. He's obviously rewarded them with his goals as well. And Stephen Kenny, I think you could sense there was a relief for him last night. He started talking about the future again. His grand plan, it turns out, was for the Nations League next year, to win the Nations League group next June. Which would,
a bit of a hostage to fortune.
Guaranteed playoff.
Wait until the draw gets made and we see who we've got. It's
exactly. You don't want to be in a position where actually you've had a decent Nations League campaign. You're going into your final game away in Iceland, needing a win to fulfil this prophecy. But Stephen Kenny's contract is for those games. It's after those matches in June his contract officially finishes. So I think he was just trying to get out ahead of things once again, and maybe even push back that decision to next June as to whether or not he should get a contract extension. But results like this are always going to change the atmosphere, and I think will change the expectation as well, particularly for the game to Luxembourg, that Ireland now have a goal scorer in Callum Robinson. And of all the players, without going over old ground, of all the players he's missed over the last year, Callum Robinson has been the one. Look at the matches he's played in and look at the Irish performances. He played over in Slovakia, started the game, played almost a full 120 minutes. Outstanding. Plays in Serbia in the 3-2 defeat, comes off with 10 minutes left, but again, makes a real impact in that game. Even the match against Serbia, where, unfortunately he can't play in that game, he's not fit enough to start in that game, comes on, he provides the cross, and the one where they kick it off the other player's arse and it goes into the back of net. Every time he plays for Ireland, he's been able to make a big impact. So if they can keep him fit, they can keep him starting, maybe at long last we can. I don't think we're ever going to stop the Robbie Keane conversation because he's never going to be Robbie Keane. But you have a player who might be able to get to 20 international goals, which would be a massive step forward.
Right, here's what's coming up between now and 10 o'clock this morning. OTB AM brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. We're going to talk with Conor O'Donoghue about the potential windfall that Plan B would be for the GAA. One of the knocks on Plan B has been we don't know how much money it would cost, is the story that's been put out there. But we believe that the maths stack up, and he's going to explain why. He was on the committee that actually came up with Plan A, Plan B, option A, B and status quo. Michael Duignan, the Offaly County Board Chairman, All-Ireland winner and obviously influential Sunday game analyst, is going to join us at 8:15 to give us his view on it. We'll bring the sports news at Will at 8:40. We're talking about the Premier League, which is back now. We can all relax, exhale, and we don't have to talk about the Ireland team. We don't have to have civil war for at least a couple of weeks.
We don't want to relax, really, do we? We want to stay in this kind of euphoric state a little bit
Keep the foot in
longer.
the throat.
Yeah, you're
what
right.
are you trying to do, Jerry? What are you trying to do?
And Nicole Turner is going to join us to talk about her silver medal in the Paralympics around about 9:05 this morning. Here's Stephen Kenny talking about Jeff Hendrick's performance. Have a listen.
Well, it really is dramatic. You know, like, I don't mean that, but Jeff, you know, went through a period when you know, when things weren't really happening for him, you know, and so well, but he has he was absolutely outstanding tonight. Complete all-round performance in every facet of play. His energy around the park, his vision and his first touch and his understanding of his role within the team, and definitely this sort of the space, playing with only two in midfield and this with the three wide players, that gives him a lot of, it suits him, really suits him, that position, and he's really just been, you know, that's one of the best games I've ever seen him play, to be honest, you know, and I think you know, I thought he was really, really, really exceptional tonight.
Yeah. Now, the one cloud on the horizon is obviously the club situation at Newcastle because of the takeover. Jeff Hendrick might not get a game for Newcastle for a while, and his contract is till 2024. So the alternative is that he really benefits from the fact that he's going to be playing with better players.
Yeah.
Well, as was pointed out last night, Ger, I think it was by Gavin Cooney, his new Saudi Arabian owners will be more than happy with his performance against Qatar.
The geopolitics, he'll arrive to work and there'll be a brand new Lamborghini for him.
Yellow. Blue.
Blue. Irish blue. Look, you'd love to see these players playing week in, week out and coming back in form. That was the thing.
Yeah, let's not get too caught up in it, though. You know what I mean? I get a bit tired. Well, he's not getting his game time. I can understand that a little bit more, to be honest with you, with the younger players who are kind of still developing, need that kind of game time. The likes of Eimear, Aaron Connolly, etc. I think that's more relevant there. For me, the more experienced players, I like Jeff Hendrick and one or two others. I never worries me so much in terms of, I'm not getting the game now, because they're smart, they're experienced.
And play.
Yeah, I think so. You get to a certain age, you know your body, you know what you have to do. You might be getting that competitive football week in, week out, but you can tune yourself mentally. You can get yourself in the right place when you come together with the international squad. I think Jeff's one of them. Okay,
that's interesting, because like at various stages, different managers will, I think, invent a narrative. Oh, he's not playing well for his club, and so therefore I'm not picking him. So it's just
too much play on that. I think too much play, and I think each player's individually were a different kind of makeup mentally. I'm talking about here. Some players will come with the international squad. Younger players in particular, if they haven't had, not getting their first team football, it'll affect them a little bit, their confidence. They won't be in the right place mentally where they feel they should be coming into a camp. Others, it's not so much a problem. They'll walk through the doors, give me the jersey, I'm kind of ready. So you just got to assess each individual player, but the more experienced players in particular, I don't think that's so much an issue.
Okay, well, one of the things that we wanted to ask you about, Kenny, was how do you take exactly what we were just talking about there, how do you take the spirit that the camp feels at the moment and apply it to the next camp? Because it's a month away, it's totally different. Everybody goes away, they get into their real world, they get back to the day job, and then they have to come back and go, oh, I remember now, everything is amazing. How do you do that?
It's there. You don't package it away, do you? It's either there or it isn't, it exists or it doesn't. So yeah, like you're saying, we're all on the outside looking in. Nathan, me and you really have no great contacts within the squad. Nobody talks to me these days. I don't get the skinny on anything inside the squad. But yeah, you do get a bit of a sense of that. Like I said before, I've never seen a player come on openly, media-wise, and criticise his manager or what's going on behind the scenes. But sometimes you get a bit of a sense of it around the place. Nathan, know better for me, being a journalist. But yeah, you get a bit of a sense. There has been a bit of more of a coming together of late. There's a decent atmosphere within the squad, so that augurs very well going forward. And I liked the mix last night. I looked at the team last night. A lot of talk about the youngsters, the amount of young players who are being blooded, but that's kind of very well balanced squad at the moment. If you look at experience in the squad, all those youngsters we could look at last night, Nathan Collins coming onto the pitch, fantastic. I must admit, any time a player comes on for his international debut, kind of, you know what I mean, it gives everybody a surge of electricity looking at it. So great to see him come on. But you've got the experience of Shane, John Egan on the pitch last night, Enda Stevens, Jeff, Conor in central mid. These are players of vast experience. Shames has got to come back into the squad as well. So there's just like the makeup in terms of the squad at the moment.
Aren't they? They're playing well. You go through those players individually, and I'm not going to say it's the best they've ever played for Ireland, but Seamus Coleman, until the injury, looked back to his very best. He was making a real impact in attacking positions. Matt Doherty obviously should have twice the 25 caps he has, but again, looks incredibly confident despite his lack of game time. Like Shane Duffy, utterly transformed from where he was 6 months ago. John Egan, rock solid. James McLean, a lot of people thought was
finished,
gone, that he was finished. He might
his
get
performance
the game
the
here
night
and
was
keep him
excellent.
involved. But well, this time last year, Enda Stevens was probably one of the few players who was 100% assured of his place in the team. Whereas now Enda Stevens is coming back after 6 months out injured, thinking, well, James McLean has come in and really impressed. And also, if Seamus Coleman is fit, he's probably going to want to play Matt Doherty at left wing back. So there's competition there as well. Like Jeff Hendrick we're talking about. I think actually Hendrick has been really good consistently for Stephen Kenny. Maybe not quite like last night. And then Callum Robinson maybe is the one who makes everything click. The one thing, Kenny, I wondered, is there a danger of overreacting to last night? Because Jeff Hendrick was brilliant.
Bit like you've been this morning.
But he played in a free for Stephen Kenny as to how he gets that balance of what he believes from last night's performance. So Hendrick was outstanding. Yeah. He sort of had a free role to do whatever the hell he wanted. And can Ireland afford Jeff Hendrick to have that role, not even against better opposition, but in a proper competitive game? Is the midfielder, does Josh Cullen being there allow Hendrick to have that role to pop up all over the park and have a real impact?
Yeah, but like I said, that is very interesting because you want to get the best out of Jeff. Nathan, got to give him that freedom, haven't you, to kind of vacate that centre. You can't tell him for the whole of the 90 minutes stay behind the ball. When we have possession, stay behind the ball in that central midfield area. Just present yourself as an outlet. If the ball is going to come backwards to you, just keep the ball kind of ticking over and just kind of, just efficiently move the ball sideways and around the pitch. You want to at times encourage them to get beyond the ball, and get in contact with the front three and even get beyond them and even get within 10, 15. Yeah, big difference playing 20, 25 yards from your front three and 10, 15 yards. You get that close to them, you can play like little 1-2s, clever little balls around the corner. We saw it with Callum Robinson's third goal. You know what I mean? He got to within 15 yards of Callum Robinson, then he's punching that ball down the sides. So you want him to play in those areas, Nathan, don't you? But I'm talking about experience and players, and Jeff's going to have to show that experience maybe against Portugal a little bit more and pick and choose his moments, really, when he makes those calculated decisions to get ahead of the ball and get himself involved. Because what we can't have is him getting himself ahead of the ball, us giving away possession, and Portugal breaking quickly at us, where he just can't regain that defensive shape, and suddenly big pockets of space are opening up, particularly down the centre of our midfield. So again, that's just game management, Jeff using his experience. And like I said, that performance last night, you really feel as if Jeff's got to stay in the team. The qualities which he showed. Now, Stephen was very complimentary in terms of performance, and I buy into that to a large extent. But when he's talking about every facet of his game, I don't think those defensive attributes which I'm talking about were really tested last night against that Qatar team, but they will be against Portugal. And then we'll see whether we can carry Jeff and that team in a midfield too, and with three out-and-out attacking players playing that kind of high-press game which Jer's talking about there, or whether we need to kind of modify our approach a little bit, Jeff individually and collectively the team as well.
On the topic of getting potentially a little bit carried away with the events of last night, like you refer to Callum Robinson, Nathan, as maybe a situation that we now have somebody who can score goals, and he's probably better than everybody else in the squad. But if you look through Callum Robinson's career, while he's been an outstanding player, and this includes for the Republic of Ireland, goals haven't necessarily been part of his game. Goals have been a part of his last two matches for Ireland. Like, he's only 26, and we're going to get a hell of a tune out of him over the next couple of years. But like, is that tune definitely going to involve goals, Kenny? Because it hasn't necessarily been that way for him throughout his career.
Well, I agree with you. I think it's a good point. So it wouldn't surprise me Callum Robinson goes 6 games without scoring a goal. Because I think that's how his career's been up until this point. And if you look at the last couple of games, Nathan, 5 goals, you think, oh, this is absolutely breathtaking. Obviously, the penalty last night. Obviously, everything at the moment, you get into these pieces of strike, everything you shoot on target, you score. So there's the significant deflection for his first goal. I'm not looking.
Three out of the 4 were deflected.
Yeah, exactly. Even that third goal last night was a brilliant goal. The meant number of passes you were talking about, etc. But that's actually significant deflection off the foul. I don't think that shot's going in. It deflects off the defender goes past the goalkeeper. You shoot, you don't score. Yeah, absolutely. But you just get a sense of at the moment he's in that. He's just in that space where everything's happening before it's going into the back of the net. So yeah, I think there is a degree. Let's not get carried away. Now we found ourselves a new Robbie Keane. We haven't. So I still think there's an onus on other players around the pitch when you set up your team. Not to be focusing on Callum Robinson now. Now he's a given for a goal every game now. That's not going to be the case. We've got to put a team on the pitch where you look around the pitch and think, you know what, we've got goals in different areas. Jamie McGrath, can we get it? Can we get a shift out of him? Can we get a goal out of him? Our wing backs. I thought James McLean's second half against Azerbaijan was great, not just in terms of his overall performance, but how he attacked the box. Particularly when the ball was down the other side of the pitch, attacking that back post. You can see potentially James chipping in with a goal or two if he plays in that area. Matt Doherty as well, Seamus Coleman. When you play with wing backs, they have to offer a threat in the last third of the pitch in terms of goals. So he's not the answer. Let's not get caught up in thinking we found.
I have one last thing on this for now. Go on, Nathan, quick.
I was going to say, he might be as close to an answer as we found, and actually the confidence from this 3-4 day spell that he'll now bring into the next international break, because you look at his career, the problem is when things have gone well, never got a run. So the last year when he got those couple of goals against Chelsea on 2 different occasions, 2 weeks later on both times he's back on the bench for West Brom. That actually now he can come into an Ireland camp and go, I'm definitely going to start here. I know I'm in that starting 11, and the confidence that brings maybe transforms him.
I think he's one of those players who would actually benefit from playing a lot of football and actually scoring regularly at championship level. But just in terms of the influence of Anthony Barry, we've only got a minute for this, and we might come back to it a little bit later on. Can you see the fingerprints of the coaching ticket on the team and stuff that he's brought to it? Like even just the creativity around some of the set pieces. I don't want to completely overblow it, but it was just interesting to see there was a wrinkle. We switched the ball from one side to the other, and there was a nice little turn that ended up giving, I think it was either John Egan or Shane Duffy, a free header at the back post. The execution at the end wasn't great, but 3 or 4 times we actually had 2 or 3 players arriving for the ball with a free header and getting in each other's way. That suggests the work is beginning to show dividends.
I'm not too sure, to be honest with you. That might be a bit of a stretch. I just don't know. It's a simple answer to that. I don't know Anthony Barry personally. Again, haven't heard too much feedback in terms of input on the training pitch. So I don't really know is the answer to that. I mean, if you look at the goal last night, the corner kick, wasn't a huge amount of imagination involved in that. Outswing a ball from Conor into the box. Shane Duffy sticks his head on it. I think it's more so maybe in terms of the general setup of the team. I mean, there's an argument, if there is an argument there in terms of us settling on that back 3 kind of win-back system. People make obvious comparisons to Tuchel at Chelsea in terms of that particular formation, 3-4-3, which Chelsea employ. Now, I think that's a bit of a jump. Chelsea play that way. We're playing this way. Clearly, Anthony Barry's the common link. I think that's too far of a stretch, in all honesty. So yeah, you would like to think so, that he's been brought in for a reason, I'd imagine, in terms of the qualities which he has as a coach. So clearly I'm hoping he's had an input, as Keith is there, and obviously the other support staff. I'm sure Stephen will say it's a collective effort on their part, but yeah, we're certainly in a good place, and there's a lot of cohesion to the play now, which is good to see. Playing with a real kind of tempo, there's a real kind of template. You're looking at the team now in terms of how we're setting up. You're seeing nice patterns of play now emerging as well. So don't think it's perfect. I think there's actually more to come, which is quite exciting. But yeah, I think we're in a good place at the moment. It's good to see. Yeah, all right. Kenny staying with us. Nathan, well done. That was good to get the notion that you're some kind of a curse around the place when you're commentating on the Ireland team, and we always give away last minute winners or just don't win games we should win. But I'm glad that you've managed to kill that rumour. Finally, I think it's the first Ireland victory we've commentated on in about 2 years. So yeah, Stewie was delighted. Kenny's the curse as well. I see him at all these games also. So you could put it on his shoulders if you want. It was yours that were the ones that we were common denominator. And the other stat from today in the paper, I don't want to mistake this now, but that was our first penalty since Robbie Brady in 2016. Yeah. It was John Fallon, I think, in the Examiner had that. And to get a penalty last night was some doing, because dear God, that referee let a lot go.
The
He should have let that tackle go.
Must have fouled Callum Robinson about 14 times and never got a yellow card. It was a slightly strange refereeing performance. Yeah, first penalty since Robbie Brady. Here's one for you, just to keep an eye on for future Ireland internationals. From what I can tell, I'd love if a listener got involved and was to correct me. From what I can tell, no Irish goalkeeper has ever saved a penalty at Lansdowne Road.
Ooh. Well, we'll put that out there. 5 minutes past 8 this morning. Nathan, good stuff. Thanks very much for that. We're going to take a quick
Thanks,
break.
lads.
We're going to ask the question about the special congress, which is coming up in 2 weeks. There hasn't been that much about the economics of the whole thing until now. Will Plan B boost GAA's revenue? We're going to find out next.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio. Off the ball.
For people to look at Roy Keane and say they're not going to take him because of what he might say as a pundit is ludicrous. It's ridiculous. How are you not going to have a player like that, a manager like that who's had the career he's had, and not try and tap into that to help your team? They're missing a trick. All of them who's not taking them, missing a trick.
Off the ball. Weeknights from 7 and weekends from 1.
This is OTB Sports Radio, live 24/7 on the OTB Sports app. He's a Lion, he's a Grand Slam winner, he's Ireland's leading try scorer, and now you can hear him first, exclusively on the OTB Sports app.
One of my abiding memories is having my cut opened up again as I got hit by the trophy in Coppers on the dance floor.
Join Brian O'Driscoll for the best insight and analysis this rugby season.
We haven't had the usual kind of grenades from Gats, that's gone, so we're creating them ourselves.
Get the jump on everyone else. Download the OTB Sports app and turn on notifications now.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Okay, we're going to hear from Michael Duignan in just a couple of minutes about the special congress about the future of Gaelic football. But I'm delighted to welcome back to the show Conor O'Donoghue, who was part of the committee that came up with the original options that are going to be put to special congress, and who joined us on the show last week to strongly endorse option B, plan B, whatever you want to call it, which will essentially flip the league from spring to the summer, and that'll be the competition that everybody enters to try and win Sam Maguire. Conor, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, Ger. How are you doing?
I'm good. I see from the papers this morning, and in fairness, the Irish Independent are leading with it on the back page with the numbers that you've crunched, which was kind of an answer to the question that was posed by Brian McAvoy in the show and in other places. People are saying we don't know what the financial implications of Plan B are. You sat in studio and said, from a financial perspective, it's a no-brainer. You've gone and crunched the numbers and done the work to try and put some meat on the bones of that argument for us. So maybe just give us the top line and explain to us how you applied the logic and then what the results were.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Ger. Look, I mean, numbers were done before and certainly gone through, and they looked really, really good from a financial perspective. So I suppose this is just about putting real flesh on bones in terms of some of the assumptions that are made. But the bottom line is that if the League's championship format was in 2019 and 2018, based on very, very conservative assumptions, I would say, you're talking about 8 million extra, roughly, on average in Central Council figures, and you're talking 2+ provincial bodies. So you're talking a total of about 10 million or thereabouts that would be added to coffers. And really the reason for that, Ger, I mean, it's exactly as described before. It's just the quantity of games. It means everyone is playing every week. It's not Dublin and Mayo, for example, that are playing 7, 8, 9, 10 games per annum. Every county's playing it. Every Division 1 county is playing it. So we're even allowing for significant reductions in attendance. Just the quantity, as Napoleon says, is a quality all of its own. And it just means that those summer games, there's so much more of them. That is going to result in extra revenue, undoubtedly.
Okay, so that's nice, short and sweet. Just to go back and parse that a little bit, the provincial councils are I think, the ones who are most concerned about the erosion of the link between the provincial championship and the All-Ireland, but also the money. That was the other thing that came through. Like, this is turkeys voting for Christmas was the direct quote from Brian McAvoy. In your estimates, the provincial councils will actually be better off under Plan B.
Yeah, and again, it's the same thing, Ger. I mean, there's very few provincial games. That's the reality of it. They're all knockout games. They're one-off games. Will they, on an individual basis, attract more paying customers? Sure, absolutely, no question about that. But the fact that you're multiplying the number of provincial games by roughly 3 or thereabouts, it just gives you so much more scope to take revenue in. And provincial councils, I mean, particularly Ulster, you'd have to say, where interest, again, we've spoken about this before, will be focused and concentrated, even allowing for some pretty, I would say, concern. I just think these numbers are going to be higher. But we're talking about 65% additional versus the 3-year average revenue in the last years before COVID. So, I mean, for me, again, the number of games here is going to be your friend from a financial perspective. You don't need huge attendances to make these numbers work. You just have a lot of games, and again, ticket prices. We're talking fairly muted ticket prices versus even what we know the cost of an Ulster final is 35 odd euro. We know the cost of a Leinster final is 40 odd euro. But even allowing for relatively modest numbers, you're still talking about significant increases. And again, the number of games here is your friend. In Leinster, I suppose, I mean, to be frank, Dublin is clearly the financial monster in the room. And when they play, their revenue or their obviously their spectator numbers are much higher than everyone else's. And you have to assume that they would be thereabouts in Leinster finals again for the next couple of years. And again, if you're talking any sort of, I'm from Meath, and Ger, I know you're looking for Kildare to do a little bit more in the years to come as well. I suspect that those Leinster final numbers, etc., could be higher too. So, yeah, it's again, forgetting about anything else in terms of the standard of the competition from a financial perspective. This makes an awful lot of sense.
So you took the available audience figures, attendance figures for 2018 and 2019 and applied a logic to what might happen. What kind of a financial or what kind of a numerical formula did you apply to try and come up with what the crowd figures might be for a summer championship?
So for Summer Championship, we had a look at the Super 8 games that were there. And we know in the Super 8 format, given there's no consequence to the last number of games for about half the teams, some of the attendances fell off. We still use those numbers. And on average, including double headers, so we halved for double headers, around 18,000. And the 2 years were quite consistent. The attendances started strong and fell away as a consequence. But we use that as a number for Division 1. What that number might apply across the board. Just to sense check it, we did a separate calculation just to see if we handballed every single Division 1 attendance, what it might look like. And that number came out at about 20,000, but we used the smaller figure, the Super 8 figure. And then what we did was, what happens in National League typically is the Division 1 games tend to obviously get significantly more revenue. Over a couple of years, you can see that the step down is about 1/3 or 33%. So we stepped down Division 2 attendance figures and that gets you a number of about 5,000. And we stepped it down right again by 1/3 on each occasion to Division 3, Division 4. So by the time we got to Division 4, you were talking about a couple of hundred spectators, which didn't make sense really from a champ. So we stepped that up slightly to about 2,000 spectators for a summer championship game in Division 4. And then we applied that across the board, used ticket prices of €20 and €15 for Tailteann Cup. The Super 8 ticket price are €25. We're trying to allow for students, OAP, juveniles, etc. And that's what we arrived at. And again, just to reiterate, Ger, it's the number of games that's your friend. There's 112 summer championship games. So will numbers be lower than knockout games? Yeah, absolutely, no question. But will there be enough people to make this work? Yeah, I think so.
And the key point in that, Conor, is trying to assess games that were of consequence. And you mentioned there a couple of the games without consequence in the Super 8s, which I think people have used as a prism to view Proposal B through. And I crunched some of the numbers last week and came up with the fact that there was 4 out of the 112 regulation games in the last full National League that was played in 2020 that were dead rubbers. So it is a tiny percentage of games that won't be of consequence, actually a far smaller percentage than in the Super 8s. Then the other thing, Conor, just to add on before you finish up here, is that this isn't a full financial picture. As you say, you're being conservative enough here in your figures, but then in the other bracket you have sponsorship and media rights, which, given the extra volume of games, is surely going up.
Yeah, and I spoke to one of the most senior commercial figures in sport in the country over the last week, and I mean, he's shaking his head and just saying, listen, there's so much scope there. I mean, the big thing clearly from a sponsorship and a media rights perspective is clearly live television and what happens there. Because live sport with Netflix and all of the rest is where it's at in terms of advertising. And there's just a big opportunity set there. And there's nothing taken into account on this as well. And I've spoken to a number of figures in this space, and they may join you at some stage, but it's that side of the revenue numbers are completely unexplored. And I'd say that's another exciting source of revenue. And just to be clear on this, I mean, the GAA puts all of that money back into the association. I mean, it doesn't give anyone a share bonus or anything like that. That money goes back to counties. So those funds can be used by counties. We could talk all day about the season tickets and how that operates, but I won't even go into that this morning, guys. But again, those funds go back into the association when they're generated. So this is a big opportunity set for the GAA. Okay, Conor, good stuff. Are you happy enough for us to publish the detail of your proposal? Because I see it's in the papers today, and I think it would be good for it to get out there and be circulated and let everybody kind of parse through it and in typical Irish fashion take shots at it. But I think you've robustly defended it, and I see certainly there's a consistency to the logic the whole way through that should carry any of those arguments. You know, absolutely, that can be circulated. It's no problem. I mean, to stress test it, it needs first division attendances to go below 10,000 for summer championship games. So Dublin games, Kerry games, it needs to go below 10,000 Division 1 and below 3,000 Division 2. So that's the Meads, the Corks. And that's at an average ticket price of €20 before it starts to just do exactly what the previous championship did. Yeah. So there's significant scope within that as well. Okay. Conor, good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us this morning. Cheers. Thanks, guys. That's Conor O'Donoghue there, who was on the task force. I'm delighted to say we also have Michael Duignan with us this morning. Michael, good morning to you. How are you?
Yeah, good morning, lads. Good.
We've been covering this story now for a couple of weeks and kind of there's a few other people who have been covering it, in fairness, the same length of time, but it hasn't quite taken off, or maybe it's just about to take off as a discussion point. The GPA came out last week. I think if I'm right, counties like your own were kind of gestating on the information and looking at the presentations that have been given and coming to a conclusion. So what's your instinct about how big an issue this is going to be over the next week and a half in particular?
I think it should be very big, Ger, because I think it's very, very important. I think it's an opportunity to change the direction of the football championship for the better. That's my own personal opinion first. I'll come back to the county's opinion in a minute. I think as a player, and I played for a long time myself, you want to be playing championship matches in the good weather in the summer. It's a huge opportunity, and particularly when we see the lopsided nature of matches over the last, there's always been that, I suppose, in the GAA, but this is an opportunity for teams to play meaningful matches against teams of their own calibre. And we've seen over the last number of years, the National League has really caught the attention of the people, and the players enjoy it because they're close matches. And we're also not losing out. We're not losing anything. We're not losing our provincial championships. We're not losing, our All-Ireland series. It's just a different way of getting there. And what it's going to do is give players, supporters, opportunities to go and play week in, week out in the good weather for crowds of people to get out and go to the matches in provincial venues. And to me, it's very, very positive. And it's certainly well worth trying. And if there's tweaks needed, I just see some commentary that maybe there's a few tweaks needed before maybe bring it back next year. But, I think you can go ahead with it and you will learn. There's never, I don't think, a system brought out yet that was perfect at the start. But it's certainly going to be, in my view, way better. One of the big concerns from a county board point of view, and if you take in our case, we're in Leinster, the provincial council in Leinster Council have been so supportive of counties like ourselves, like going back to Michael Delaney's time in Leinster, Michael Reynolds now as chief executive. We wouldn't, we had fantastic facilities in Offaly O'Connor Park. The Faithful Fields would be our his project, and John Horn was chairman of Leinster when that kicked off. And without his support at the time, that wouldn't have happened, because he was the Leinster Council were the first people who said, look, we have this grant aid for you here, and made that happen. And now we're in looking for 6 coaches at the minute. Leinster Council are behind us again. There's a few roadblocks at the minute, with redundancies, etc. in the association, and it's just delayed slightly. But again, they're fully supportive of it. So I think the one thing, and Conor has, Conor's report there, it'll be very interesting to see how that's But this is very late in the day, I think, for the financial implications or the discussion to be coming out, because there's been no information passed on, and there is a fear in provincial councils that they might lose some of their independence and that ability to support and to So what I would have thought was it would have been very sensible to guarantee a sort of maybe an average figure over maybe the 5 pre-COVID years, to guarantee that sort of income to the provincial councils as a first point, and then if things are exceeded, then you can provide extra funding. But I think that's created a little bit of a fear. And even last night we had a county committee meeting, and that was just one of the things that the delegates asked us to get more information on was what would be the financial implication for the provincial councils, and to make sure that they weren't in in a position where there's concern over their ability to operate independently of Croke Park. So in overall, I think it's very positive. We've been in touch. Our players met on it. They came back to me, the players' reps, and they're 100% supportive of Plan B. I met our team management last week, John Mahan, Tomas O'Shea and the lads, and they're again fully supportive. And our county committee, then county management and county committee are also behind Plan B. But as I said, there was some concern over the financial implications.
Okay, and does what Conor's saying, I realise it is late in the day, but is it too late in your view to carry the day? Because if the figures hold up, and it would be very easy for Croke Park to come out and say, yeah, they do hold up, and also very easy, your idea is a great one, and I think it makes perfect sense to say, over the next 3 years, we're going to run this experiment, we'll make sure that your income is the same, at least as it was, because centrally we believe there's going to be an opportunity for us to generate more funds. We think you might even generate more funds locally yourselves, if Conor's maths stack up, that it's worth trialling for 3 years.
Absolutely, I think but again, you have to realise you're dealing with, an association that is relatively conservative and a little bit afraid of change. So I think and there's still time, as you say. But I think Duignan, generally would have to keep maybe out of this, in terms of giving a personal opinion. But I think maybe, I think Tom Ryan could come out and discuss some of these issues and give some surety around them, because I think look, anyone that I've been talking to realises. Well, I know you've had some different views on the programme, particularly from Ulster, but people, if you're being realistic about it, like, you have to listen to your players, and they're the ones that, I wouldn't call it a sacrifice. They want to do what they're doing, and I always, I think, go back and ask any county player, it was the best days of your life, you really enjoy doing it. But it is a huge commitment, and why not listen to them? Because as far as I can see, I haven't heard or Annie, and you can correct me on this, but I think it's been fairly unanimous among the players, among the managers around the country, and I think on a trial period, what have we got to lose? Especially if that financial sort of surety is given. So I would encourage people to think along those lines. I can't speak for any other county. We're all independent, and we'll think along our own lines. But we have certainly considered in great detail at Offaly, and a wide range of people, as I say, from a management committee and the county board and our delegates last night, right down to the most important people, our players, and then a wide range of people on our management. I met 11 members of the management and backroom team the other night, and we had a very good discussion on it. And we just think it'll be revolutionary in terms of the enjoyment and of the opportunities. I know there's downsides. There are a few things. Look, you can be second in Division 3 or 4 and get promoted, and then someone else could win the Title Cup and you mightn't go up, and things like that. But there's little tweaks that will be, and maybe some of them aren't so little, and they might emerge during it, but you can always change those. Yeah. And so I just think it's a fantastic opportunity to show a bit of leadership, a bit of forward thinking, and bring a bit of excitement back in, because nobody wants to see a continuation of these hammerings that have been going on over the last number of years in Championship. And just look at the average losses that some of these teams are taking. And if you want these lads to continue to play inter-county football and put in the time and effort that's needed, you want to take their views very, very seriously now, because we could look back in a few years' time and where life is changing, society is changing all the time, and maybe players won't continue to put up with the status quo.
Yeah, I can actually see a situation where somebody plays inter county and then doesn't go back to their club because they're so fed up with the game itself. And look, we're in the rounds of speculation there, but it's not a guarantee that you'll continue to play a sport where you're getting humiliated in public representing your county when it was your dream as a child, and actually you end up getting beaten 30 points by Mayo or Dublin or whoever it is in the situation that we have at the moment. Can I just ask you what actually happens now? So as a county, your executive have decided that you're going to be in favour of it. How many delegates do you guys get to send to Special Congress, and are they specifically mandated then on the day to vote for Plan B?
Yeah, we have 3 delegates. We normally would have 5, so it's reduced, obviously because of COVID. So myself, the county secretary, and our central council delegate. Yeah, so we are mandated now, and I suppose we're entrusted by our delegates now. As I said, the only caveat was that we you know, and it should be forthcoming because is to get some, you know, more information around the financial interest. But as far as the proposal goes, yeah, Offaly GAA will be supporting Proposal B.
How much would it help a county like you, your delegates and delegates of other counties, Michael, to hear somebody higher up in the GAA give the thumbs up to maybe the figures that we heard this morning and say, yeah, that all stacks up and this is all in the clear? Just that extra sense that might give people a bit more trust about the whole thing, because that seems to be the issue here.
Yeah, it's not really trust. It's that, look, our relationship in Offaly GAA, and look, we have, I suppose it's a bit unusual that some of our funding will come from Croke Park, obviously, you know, in terms of how the division of funds, but your relationship on the ground on a day-to-day level is with your provincial council, you know, with Michael Reynolds, with the coaching team, James Devan, Alan Mulhall over there, with John Brown on the financial side. They're the people that really, you know, that you know better, that you're working with on a daily basis. So those. I'm also on the management of Leinster because there's 4 chairmen and it revolves every year. And it would be, it's not, I think people might think it's you know, maybe the provincial council trying to protect their own patch. It's not that at all. It's on the ground, the work that they do with the clubs, with the county. You know, James Devan, the coaching officer that looks after Offaly, would be around, you know, and not down on the ground as part of this process that we're going through to try to build our coaching on the ground. And as I say, we have 5 coaching staff at the minute, 2 GPOs. We have an application gone in and accepted by Leinster for 6 more GPOs, and we're hoping maybe another 2 or 3 next year. But we need the expertise and the support and the HR element of Leinster to do that, because we don't have a HR element. Like it's a huge, I think, advantage for the Dublins, and I know I often wonder how they must have their own HR. Cork, I think, looking at the staff they have, and maybe other counties have, but we don't have the resources to set up a HR and employ people. So we depend on Leinster for all of that. Then if we're doing developments in our clubs or everything, Leinster's and Croke Park as well would be involved in terms of grant aid. But, you know, it feeds up through Leinster up to Croke Park. So that relationship, that whole system, it works. It works really, really well. So I think if people, you know, I think if it is certainly a fear on the ground in provincial councils that they may lose, you know, some control and some of their own autonomy. And to answer your question, I think it would be massive. And I think, you know, there's a responsibility on the GAA to come out and sort of answer that, because there must be some cost analysis. You know, we've heard from Conor this morning. There has to be, and as you mentioned there, the commercial side, the TV rights, you know, the opportunity to build on this and to really promote these matches in the provincial towns, maybe some Friday night matches, Saturday evening matches, you know, which can bring great life and great energy to the communities. So I think, you know, a good strong statement from some of the hierarchy, and you know, sometimes you have to put your neck in. I know it's down to the toes, but you know, you have to say, yes, look, we think this will be good for the association. We think that this will be well worth. And I say, you're only talking about a 3-year trial. The GAA has been around a long, long time. It'll be around for a long time to come. So I can't see any downside in getting in behind this and really supporting their players and what they're looking for. And I say, we're all looking for, really. It's not just the players, but I think, you know, they're the ones that, as I say, that are playing these matches and they really enjoy it. They can see that the league matches are so, even though they're played in the depths of the winter, but they're so close, they're so exciting. There's very little between the teams in a general sense. And can you imagine when you transfer that over into the better weather and the longer evenings? I think we'll have a great championship ahead of us. I
think that's an underrated part of this, that for 8, 9, 10, 12 weeks of the summertime, there's going to be big games in Tullamore, in Athlone, in Navan, in Newbridge, like in non-urban areas. There's going to be a transfer of people coming and going, spending money and having parties, and like just generally the whole country could do with that.
Yeah, and look, as you say, look, we don't have all the answers. But you have to have an opinion, and I think I would agree with all of that. So you'd imagine, you know, that's it, and you know, that's not there at the minute. It's a huge opportunity, and it's a huge opportunity to balance out a lot of things. Maybe won't be as many, and you can still use Croke Park. There might be an opportunity there to maybe play not double header in Croke Park because players love the opportunity to get there, and it's very hard for the players in the lower divisions. Look, there's loads of things you can look at in the overall. There would be a responsibility, I'm sure, towards people that corporate ticket people in Croke Park as well that would have bought tickets on a promise of so many matches being there. So that all has to be considered. So it's not a simple thing to fix, but there are, to me, there are positives far outweigh the possible negatives. There are a few, as I say, negatives or maybe tweaks that might be needed down the road. But I don't know. I just think I think generally people feel it's the right thing right across the country, and it's then to get to 60%. But I don't think there's any support for Proposal A for teams to go out into other provinces. So it's this or stay as we are, and I think it'll be a very backward step to stay as we are with all the problems that we know we've had over the years.
Do you know what, Michael? I think people listening to you this morning would have gained a good bit of hope that your delegates going to Congress are actually unanimously in favour of this, because I think you kind of touched on it yourself there, that the GAA can be a conservative enough organisation, and there is this feeling out there that the people who go to Congress are the very kind of the living proof of that almost, that they are conservative. But actually, from what you're saying, there was good discussion that happened in Offaly, good constructive debate that happened, and you've come to the conclusion. And I think that'll give people a lot of hope that all the other county boards around Ireland are doing a similar thing.
Yeah, well, I tell you, I qualify in a general sense. It's not conservative. It's just that there is, you don't know what way things are going to go. So you're taking a little bit of a shot in, but I think, look, the evidence is there. And I'd say if somebody came out and just said, look, we've looked at this under these headings, and this is what we think, and it will work or should work, I think that would give great hope. But the other thing just about our delegates, I see them in there last night. It was the first actually physical meeting since March 2019, and it's another thing, a huge challenge facing the association is the work that volunteers are doing on the ground. We actually at the minute have no full-time staff in Offaly. Our operations manager retired some months ago, and we haven't replaced him yet. And some counties have huge amount. I've talked about this before in terms of equality of funding, etc. But the time and effort even for club, like the amount of matches and this split season has caused, I suppose, a huge. We also have all of last year's championships. Well, not all of them, but we had to finish our senior hurling championship. We had all our underage competitions. And we have finished all of them now, and we're getting to knockout stages in all of this year's, but we're running right up to the third week in November. And the work rate on these people, and there can be criticism. It actually annoys me intensely when I hear people talking about these fogies in the GAA, etc., etc. And I'm one of those myself now. But the work that they put in on the ground on a day-to-day basis, and the pressure that they're under, and the responsibility of even chairing a club now and or secretary of a club, the work rate is absolutely massive. And I have nothing but the highest regard for all of these people, but it is going to be a challenge into the future. Like you don't see too many people maybe under 40 years of age or 50 years of age maybe even at even club meetings or county meetings anymore. And it's going to take a lot of thinking as well and soul searching, I think, in terms of recruiting new people. And I see how hard it is to fill any role with the right people. And there's a lot of roles that you need to fill to be able to operate properly and successfully. So, just anyway, it's nothing to do with today's debate, but it's a huge challenge.
I think it feeds into it, Michael. To be honest, I think that
everything feeds it.
I do. I think if everybody agrees at the start, this is our plan now for the next 3 years. It'll be a much more vibrant place. It'll be, I think, easier to get people to come because, I definitely, talking to players over the last 10 years from counties that weren't the 3 or 4 counties who believed they could win in All Ireland, there was this sense of what's the point, and it kind of feeds into a lot of people's decision. They're going to just volunteer for the club. They're not going to go on to be a delegate at county board because ultimately they're in a second or third tier organisation that isn't actually quite respected centrally the way it should be. But I believe that this is an opportunity for every county to get the respect it deserves, to have full home grounds for matches that are meaningful at the end of a training period that everybody's been training for the same amount of time. I don't know, it just feels like we're ready for an explosion here, and for whatever reason there's a blockage.
Yeah, no, there's a great opportunity to breathe new life, and I agree with you, because it does need that, and you need that all the time in terms of driving the team forward. And and look, I think maybe I suppose county boards are, as you said, they're so busy as well, lads, and like you can't underestimate this. Like there's 10 motions on and we've looked at them in detail. We've discussed them at management levels in terms of what way we're going to. We had a brief discussion on them last night at county. Like some of them are minor enough in comparison to this one, but there's some interesting ones in there as well. And to take the time and to go through them and to tease them out and analyse them and to discuss them and to reach a consensus, that all takes, and to go and talk to a lot of online meetings as well over the last 18 months. And there's so much happening on a day-to-day basis. There's matches coming at you every night in clubs and everything else. And this is what happens, that things like this don't maybe get the attention that they should get. And then they're maybe not passed, or they are, whatever, or maybe wrong decisions are made.
Yeah.
For like there's little ones we would have, like the giant captains. Like, what difference does it make that just two lads go up and accept a cup? And it just happens and slips through maybe because people aren't thinking, and that's a very minor issue. But so I just think, stand back and say go through a process, talk to your players, really engage with them, talk to your management, talk to your delegates. It takes a few days. It takes and explain because I say a lot of people out there, even involved in clubs all over the country, don't fully understand what's actually happening with this.
No, I think that's fair enough. So just my last point on this is you actually haven't seen official documentation around the finances yet. That hasn't been communicated with you guys, and presumably it hasn't been communicated with the provincial council either, because they would have passed it on to you to say, look, this is what the financial projections for Plan A look like, this is what they look like for Plan B, and this is the status quo.
Correct. And
you want those?
Yeah, I think it's very important. I think it's very important to give that. I think if coming from your provincial councils down to give that, I think that would certainly add a lot of weight to the decision making that's going to happen at Special Congress.
Okay, good stuff, Michael. Thanks a million for taking the time to join us this morning. I think it's important to get the viewpoint of people who have a meaningful voice and who are actually going to be there, putting their hands up or pressing the button. Hopefully, it's a yes for Plan B, but we'll see. Thanks a million.
Okay, lads. Cheers. Good talk to you,
Michael Duignan there. Kenny, you're obviously.
That's really interesting. Last couple of weeks, had a couple of people on, very interesting to listen to there. Conor in particular for me. I know you're talking about let's crunch the numbers, let's see exact figures, but sometimes I think you have to take a step back. Conor was talking about just the basic arithmetic here in terms of volume of games, 3 times more games. We know how much support there is for Gaelic football amongst the left and breadth of the country. People will turn out, particularly more competitive games. And he wasn't even touching upon the commercial side, as you mentioned there, was he, in terms of sponsorship and TV rights in particular. I think everybody can appreciate that potentially that could snowball off the back of like more competitive football. But for me, like, I'd really value the opinion of the players themselves, the GPA over here. Now you could flip this over to England and start talking about the players over in England, etc., etc. And to be honest with you, I'll take it with a pinch of salt if we're talking about the Premiership over in England, because I throw back the argument to you that, look, players in England, for me, self-interest, massive. I really wouldn't trust to a large extent what players are saying. We saw that European breakaway, Super League, World Cup every 2 years, high-profile players coming out. Yeah, I support that. Totally acting their own kind of self-interest, sponsorship deals, more profile for themselves, etc., etc., etc. With the players over here, I always get a sense of it's a case if they park their own individual motivation, what's good for them. It's about kind of club, kind of county and the game as a whole. I genuinely feel as if that's what's kind of driving the players when they come out and they support this. So that's a good thing for me. That's why I think players and managers over here, more so than any other sport, certainly professional sport, I kind of value what the players say. I think it's more important than generally speaking. And the last thing I'd say, the gentleman you had on here last week was it Sean Kelly, the older gentleman. I thought he made a great point when he was speaking. And he said about players in the smaller counties who are becoming disillusioned with the game. You spoke about it there, Ger, in terms of the amount they invest with their county, in terms of training, the commitment which they make, the sacrifices which they make to turn up and potentially have all that ended over the course of 80 minutes football and having to go repeat the process again, and to the point where they're actually becoming disillusioned and walking away from the game, becoming disillusioned. That absolutely hit me like a hammer last year, because I think those players should be valued just as much as the more higher profile players playing for the bigger counties around the county. So that was absolutely key for me. When I heard that last week from Sean Kelly, for me that was absolutely massive. So that's got to change. So how do you kind of change that? How do you encourage these people, keep them involved and keep them motivated well, this seems to me like an obvious solution. I know it's not a simplistic solution, but for me, from the outside looking in, and I'm not as heavily invested as you lads in terms of the GAA scene over here, you're right. I'm actually, the more I read about it and listen to people, listen to Michael talking there, the more I get potentially excited about the prospect. It just kind of changed the direction a little bit.
I think that this is like a transformational moment for all sorts of different reasons. We'll be into the year 3 of this, and there'll be a new chance for players from fans who are travelling the length and breadth of the country, who are injecting money into local economies. They're absolutely desperate for it. Like, jersey sales will increase. The point you make about players, right? So 10 years we've been talking about Longford. Dennis Conor, the Longford manager at the time, went and said in the paper he tried 60 players to try and fill his squad, and he couldn't fill a squad for Longford because they were all going, why would I think the draw had already been made, and I think they had Dublin in the first round. Might have been one of those seasons where the draw gets made in November, a big hoo-ha is made about this draw, and we all know it's completely meaningless because there's 3 games ultimately that are going to decide the destination of the championship, and he couldn't get players to come. And everybody says that we don't know, and there's an interesting piece by Martin Brownlee today, and it's certainly, there is a massive imbalance where Longford are in the same championship as Dublin in the first place, right? But if Longford had all their best players playing week in, week out in Division 3, there's a chance they could win Division 3. But their best players won't show up if they know that in summer the one game that's going to be on TV will then be beaten 40 points by Dublin. Because why would you go, why would you volunteer for that?
So indirectly you're saying that pool of players is actually going to get stronger around the country. You're going to keep those stronger players. Yeah, the whole product then is going to become stronger. It's going to become more competitive. It's going to become more attractive. Potentially people like investors.
The grounds will improve because they'll have to. Because there'll actually be more people coming through. The toilets will have to be clean. There'll have to be a lick of paint.
Yeah. And people want to come. It's not as if we're talking League of Ireland football here. Where do we get these people out to go and watch? It's almost like a desperation thing. Where can we get them to come and to force them? Not force them, but to win them over, to make the argument. You feel with the GAA, the football, the hurling, it's there already. You know what I mean?
They're waiting to be won over.
Yeah, that connection is there. They want it, just almost looking for that small little push, and this could be it.
Instead, we're saying no. There's no point in you coming because your team's going to get hockeyed.
Yeah,
absolutely hockeyed. And actually, there's no point in you investing in your ground because you're never going to get any games that matter. There'll be a couple of league games, and sure, there's only going to be 1,500 at those. It's like, well, actually, what if we made the league the championship and played it in summertime when the weather was good?
Yeah,
your best players will be playing.
Yeah,
every club will be represented.
And I love the point you made there, Jared, about big games being dotted around towns, the length and breadth of Ireland. That's absolutely fantastic. Cavalcades of cars coming into those small towns, parking up, spending their money. Yes, on a load of different levels. Not just, you can get focused sometimes on the economic, financial side, but just from a social point of view. A lot of these towns struggling, small businesses, the high street, bypasses. Yeah, big motorways bypassing these small towns now, forgotten about. Absolutely phenomenal that in terms of the effect it could have.
And we got a tiny glimpse of that in 18 and 19 with the Super 8s, but the problem was it was only a fraction of the country. Clonus was amazing that first year of the Super 8s. Castlebar for that Mayo Donegal game, by all accounts, was absolutely sensational. I know for a fact that Killarney for that Kerry Mayo game was amazing, but instead everybody's involved in this all of a sudden. Everybody gets a chance to kind of feel what it's like to have these unique fixtures that mean something in your own backyard. But actually the streets are thronged because it's July or because it's May or June rather than it being February, and you're actually deciding, God, there's a blizzard outside, will I go to watch my team in the National League?
Or will I sit at home watching on TV?
Yeah.
I think that look, that's why we've been so agitated about this whole thing, and no one was talking about it until the GPA came out last week. We were literally the only ones, sorry, not the only ones, but the vast majority of people hadn't been talking about it, and now it's starting to, there's a little bit in the papers every day, but it's fundamentally going to alter the sporting landscape if they go for it. And if they don't go for it, I can see a lot of people saying
it's a bit like playing out from the back, the Stephen Kenny revolution. Risk and reward. You
got to stick with you got to show some signs of progression.
Yeah, they're standing still, you're going backwards, as they say. But it is there's a small element of risk there. But for me, it's absolutely minimal. And I just think potentially this thing could take off, like you're saying. The possibilities here, you get that bit of a tinge, don't you? Thinking potentially where it could go. So, yeah, why not? Let's take a leap of faith.
I agree. 8:44 this morning. OTB AM brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. A very special episode of the Football Pod is now live. Dublin GAA star and former international rugby star Hannah Tyrrell joined Andy, Paddy and Tommy. She spoke about her struggles with mental health, barriers for women in sport, why she stopped playing rugby and much more as well. If you've been listening to the Football Pod, it's very strong stuff. If you've not heard it, do yourself a favour and check it out. as ever, it's live on the OTB Sports app for 24 hours. First, that's the best place to find it, and we'll play out with a preview of that chat a little bit later on this morning. A quick run through the sports pages this morning. We have many candidates for Tab of the Morning to you. Everybody was in good form last night. It turns out the win brings creativity. So we'll start with OTBsports.com. And it's Robinson hat-trick helps Ireland put Qatar to the sword at the Aviva. We've got player ratings. Andy McEntee survived last night. Fairly straightforward survival for him in the end. And hungry fans ended up clashing with the police, and there was arrest made for that as well. Front page of the Examiner this morning is Singing the Blues in our beautiful jersey. Beautiful. It looks long sleeve because obviously Conor Robinson's wearing the Under Armour as well. Robinson fires hat-trick as Ireland let loose on Qatar. The Daily Mail, Rhapsody in blue. Kenny's Ireland on a roll, but manager refuses to get carried away. They also have the Andy McEntee story surviving. The front of the Irish Times sports section, Robinson leads the rout as Ireland impress again. Our Callum is a goal machine and Stephen Kenny is beaming is the headline on that. So the back page of the Guardian is John Stones celebrating after his equaliser. Sticks and stones, England scrape draw, but trouble tomorrow's game. Obviously they're qualified anyway, so it doesn't really matter. The Indo 10 million jackpot up for grabs in championship revamp. It's 10 million extra money that might be generated by Plan B, which is the other side of this. We can't get caught up in the economics of it, but the economics make sense apart from all of the other social aspects of it. Kenny looks to the future after Robinson runs riot is the headline on that. I'm going to do these ones. Blue Thunder is the back page headline on the Star. I just want to read you a little bit of Eamon Dunphy. He was having a good night last night. This is one of the great nights in Irish soccer history. It's a very long time since we've had an evening like that, and it shows the natural talent that we have and what you can do if you play without fear. That's what everyone's doing now. We played modern football, a passing game. We look like Barcelona at times, or Spain, or Italy. We passed the ball around and the movement was good, and the crowd loved it. It was brilliant to watch. That was a fabulous performance. It was a superb win, and one that answered all the questions about Stephen Kenny. He was loving it. He was feeling it last night.
Do you know what, Jared? Like, I mean,
I'd like to have been beside Dunphy when he was feeling it like this, because that is as effusive as I've ever seen.
And what's really interesting
I've been reading him 35 years, roughly, since I was about 10.
What's interesting is that people will say in response to that, and to some of what's been said in the aftermath, it's only a friendly. But actually, what's really interesting is that it is only a friendly. And like, we can't do anything to control our emotion when watching these games. And yet I think there's a lot of people who felt like Eamon Dunphy watching that game last night, and it was still only a friendly. Imagine what it would have been like if that was actually a meaningful qualifier. Like, people aren't stupid enough to get carried away with a friendly, but yet that's kind of happening because the quality of fare in a lot of people's minds was that good over the course of the last couple of games. So I think in a way, the fact that it was just a friendly almost kind of enhances the national mood around the team. I'm not saying it proves anything with the direction the team is going, but the mood around the team and the support that the team is going to get. Like, the atmosphere when the national anthem comes before that Portugal game.
It's going to be good.
That is going to be incredible.
That game's going to sell out. It's going to be 50,000. What do you think of that, Joe Duffy? That's the headline of Mark McCadden's piece. Picture of Callum Robinson. The subheader almost got it right here in the Herald. Here's to you, Mr. Robinson. But the best variation of that one is, here's to you, Kisses Robinson. That's good. You're not yeah, even Kenny. You're getting sucked into it now, Kenny. It's like, yeah, I agree. That is good. Hat-trick hero is buzzing. Was there another one in there? Treble rouser. It's shake and vax for Robbo as he thrills fans.
You've saved the best for last, though.
Shake and vax. Robinson Bluso. Blueprint for the future is starting to take shape. This is the Mirror, to give them the credit. Blueprint for the future is starting to take shape as Kenny's men win again and Callum hits treble to sink the World Cup hosts. Treble rouser, it's shake and vax for Robbo is pretty good, right? It's like shake, SHEIKH, just so you get it. Qatar and the vax, because the vaccine. It's shake and vax.
I think most people got the second.
I'm not sure.
I can't explain that one.
It was an ad. He doesn't even know the shake and vac ad existed.
Shake and vac. Put the freshness back. Shake and vac and put. No? Ah, come on.
This is a common theme here every morning, Kenny, where I sit into the juvenile corner while people get wistful about the 1980s.
The room does too.
Classic.
Every time you vacuum, remember what to do.
Tune into rolling back the ears. When RTA just tune in.
Reeling in the ears.
You pick up a reeling in the ears. Yeah.
I can't believe you don't know that. That's a classic, important cultural moment in our lives.
Maybe I do. I didn't confirm whether I do or not.
Okay. Well, look, the papers are full of effusive praise this morning. It's very rare that we get to do this, that everybody's kind of...
Yeah, I've no problem with that. Yeah, let's jump on board. In terms of, I think Owen's right, just in terms of that kind of, let's not try and box it off, that the kind of outpouring of emotion a little bit. And there's been talk sometime, isn't there, Jerry, about a little bit of a disconnect maybe between the Irish supporters. And that's been the case. I know people, friends of mine, who just kind of stopped going to football in the Aviva for quite some time. So that is important. That connection's always been special. Probably hasn't been as strong as has been the case previously. So yeah, hopefully we'll see that. We'll see the fans and the players come together. I think you're right, that Portugal game for me. Now last night I wouldn't be getting too carried away with that atmosphere inside the stadium. Yeah, the flashing lights and the whole shebang, whatever. But that stadium was half full last night. And I don't like looking around and saying I'm seeing half empty stadiums. So for me, full house against Portugal, I agree with you. I think that will be the case. I think that's going to be important, because I think that's the players are going to feed off that in the game against Portugal. We're actually going to need them that night, because we're not going to have it all our own way against Portugal. We're going to have those moments, periods of the game where, you know, we're going to get penned in, you know what I mean, and we're going to need to be lifted almost by the home crowd.
Yeah, and look, you really hope it works out for them. The other side of that is, if it doesn't work out for them, getting beaten by a team as good as Portugal, and how bad the defeat is, it's the recovery from that again. So it's an important window in some respects.
Performance for me. Let's not get carried away. Win. We're there. Loss. Let's look at the performances. Kid always is. Any kind of sport. I think I'd like to think most managers, coaches will say that. Concentrate on the performance. Like the result take care of itself. Generally, that's the case. People talk about never quite understood. I always got a bit nervous actually when I heard the manager of the dressing room say, "Look, lads, forgot performance today. Forget about it. It's all about the result." That never made sense to me. That made me a little bit fearful actually, about anxious. Or what we saying? What about that work we did on the training pitch?
Yeah.
That didn't matter. You know what I mean? You trust your work. You trust the body of work that you're doing on the training pitch. In the international case, when you come together as a group and you try and roll it out as best you can. When the games come along, you need to have confidence in that kind of your tactical setup, and you just sense as if there's a little confidence ground there. That kind of cohesion's kind of coming together on a lot of different levels. So hopefully we'll continue that upward trajectory, because I think we have to be competitive and to qualify for those major tournaments coming forward. I think we need those improvements still need to come. So hopefully we're on that kind of upward trend.
Okay. 8:52. Let's turn our attention to the Premier League and some quick questions about what we think is going to happen over the next while. So
Premier League, what?
I need you to get your crystal ball out, Kenny.
Rewind. Let's rewind. What are we talking about? England, Premier, what? Man United, yeah, I'm with you now.
So relegation, right? I want you to...
I'm literally... It seems as if it's like 6 months ago since we last covered the Premier League game. It's funny, isn't it? That international break, and maybe a little bit of kind of emotion where we are with the team, and it's so kind of consuming, isn't it?
You should do it previously on the Premier League.
It's difficult to come out of it. It's difficult to come out of it and park it. And so, right, let's get back onto Premiership duty.
I hope that that's a good thing in the long run. If they can continue in the direction they're going and they've turned things around, then I think that the fact that it matters so much now, because there was definitely international breaks. It was
international, yeah.
It was creeping in. Like, you'd be on your phone for most of the match, flicking. Oh, we've got another corner. They've got another corner. Like,
people weren't getting excited, Joe. Were they like talking when the game's coming up? You'd be talking about it, buzz, tickets, but the whole shebang be buzz. That bit of buzz around the games. I'm sure. I'm sure they remember that. That hasn't been the case, like, you know what I mean? Like I said, for some time.
And maybe Kenny's critics have done a bit of a favour in kind of getting the crowd behind him. Like, they feel a bit of ownership over him. They feel a bit of ownership of the team. And the team, if they can come through that, and the signs are relatively positive at the moment, they're definitely not through it. I don't think it's over yet.
It's more about, it's not simple. It's more about the Kenny. For the Kenny fans, a bit of Kenny fans, same with any manager. You know what I mean? To have a supporters.
It feels like
it's about that group, and maybe not naturally gravitate towards Stephen and the staff and get behind them, or potentially bringing those people all on board. Not because I'm a Stephen Kenny fan, but do you know what? Forget about the manager. I actually enjoy what I'm seeing on the pitch.
Yeah.
The football that we're producing.
There's enough excitement in the players. Like, in the performances that they're putting out there, and even the backstory of some of them, you kind of were falling in love with this team, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, the young players as well. Even like Nathan Collins, I checked it last night, kind of working on the game. I played with his dad, Dave Collins. I played schoolboy football in Dublin with him. Dave played for Cherry Orchard. He went to England when he was young. He signed for Liverpool, had his career and kind of came back. So again, seeing these young fella on the pitch last night, actually when the game was over, I saw Nathan go over and try to celebrate to an extent as best you can with some family in the stand, and his dad was there. I recognised me and Pat Fenlon were looking down, and we could see him down there, and he was obviously very emotionally effective, his dad. So that was a lovely touch, you know what I mean? So it's things like that you know, you kind of recognise, you feel almost not a part of it, like, you know what I mean?
You are a part of it. You captain this team.
No, but you have a distance, like, you know, this was the beauty of Irish international football for me. You felt as if you had a relationship with people from a distance. You knew him. Oh yeah, you know, his ma used to. Yeah, that's his brother who lives down the road. That's a good friend of his. You know what I mean? There's a close personal relationship, but it always felt as if the team was closer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In terms of that kind of bond between supporters and players for that reason. So little things like that, like last night for me, kind of, you know, makes them more special.
We did a piece a couple of weeks ago about the walking tour that starts in Cork Park and finishes in Dalymount. I don't know if you've ever been on it, but they stop off along the way. I think at one of your gaffs when you were a kid, and it's kind of that conversation about
one of me gaffs. We weren't like big property investors, you know what I mean? My mum and me, that we didn't have 8 properties around Dublin. We used to just flip from one to the other.
Well, I don't know where you live, so I wasn't sure if you'd moved or not.
You used to flip a little bit. That would have been getting into the old Carpo house.
And the amount of footballers who live between or who grew up in that area, like, I can see why it feels like it's a community thing. You know, you kind of come from an area which was a hotbed of Irish football. It hasn't really been talked about like that.
Yeah, yes, I never really thought of it that way, to be honest with you. You're probably right. You throw a blanket around maybe that part of Dublin, but it's bigger than that, really, isn't it? You know what I mean? It's bigger. It's kind of it's across the whole island, isn't it? The representation which we have, Cork players in
now
particular,
it is,
Kerry, and all over. Now you're talking about it, exactly. Players now who not necessarily born in the country. Chiedozie Ogbonne's a very interesting story there in terms of his family coming and settling in Ireland. I thought it was a very nice read the article about him. Obviously kind of grew up and very close to the community down in Cork for obvious reasons. That's where he grew up, that's all he's known. But his dad, he was saying, had the option of actually moving the family from Nigeria to Ireland or Florida in the United States, and he made the choice to go to Ireland, and the reason was he worked with a number of Irish people in his work and had a really kind of positive experience with them, and that made his mind up for him. Well, this is the environment where I want my family, my child to grow up in. So that was a kind of really nice touch, and a little backstory there that you're talking about. I think people feed off that a little bit in terms of making that connection with the squad as well, Jerry. Just little small things like that make a big difference.
It all adds up, and it all matters, and it all makes the team really interesting at the moment. And
I can't believe those Munster lads are too happy wearing that Leinster jersey. Is there going to be an issue? It's going to be an issue with that.
Maybe it can unite us
going forward.
It's going to bring us all together.
It's got to be Ulster red, maybe. It's
that's you know,
Munster red. Connacht.
We haven't quite.
Connacht? Is that blue? Is that blue? Connacht blue?
Well, Connacht's green. That's the.
Connacht green is the traditional. Oh, right.
Well, maybe that's it. Like, once we put on the Ulster colours, the IFA will just disband right now and say, take all our players. You can have them.
And we've opened a can of worms. Let's get back to the Premier League can of worms. Who's going to get relegated, Kenny? Give me a
Oh, Jer, come on. Are we struggling for time?
No, we're not.
You need a filler. Is that what it is?
Not at all. It's the opposite. People are like...
who's what? Name them.
Newcastle
Name
United.
check them. Who's tweeted in this morning? I'm desperately need you to talk about the bottom train, the Premiership. We're going to get relegated, Jer, please.
Well, okay. Well, then we'll skip the relegation.
Penny down on that.
Let's skip the relegation.
None obviously from what you're saying.
Are Newcastle going to get relegated?
I don't, but that's dependent, Jared, isn't it? Because there's talk about Steve Bruce being out the door in a couple of weeks
or an hour.
So that's going to be a huge factor. You know, he goes out and Antonio Conte comes in the next couple of weeks. I mean, I think that's going to be a factor in terms of whether Newcastle are going to stay up or not. You know, whether 100-200 million becomes available in the January transfer window. I think it's going to be significant, relevant in terms of whether Newcastle stay up.
They can spend 190 apparently.
Just trying to make a point to just trying to make a point to you.
I get the point you're making, but it's almost bang on in terms of the amount of money they might spend. They've got to go crazy in the transfer window to make sure they don't get relegated. But if you go too crazy,
Yeah, exactly. No, I think that's dangerous. I think that's a dangerous thing. I think ideally, if you're looking at it, should you change I'm not saying you shouldn't change the manager, to be honest with you. There's an argument there for terms of stabilisation, keep the manager in place. He understands the players were there, he's worked with them, and maybe giving him responsibility to add to that in the transfer. Well, not a huge sum of money, but maybe 2 or 3 players in key areas of the pitch in that transfer window. Maybe that's a better argument in terms for them staying up this year, rather than making that out you go, there's 10 million, off you go.
Give him a 10 million bonus for keeping the team in the Premier League. Give him 100 million to spend and go, just keep us in the Premier League. That's all you have to do. And at the end of the summer, you can go off and we'll get Brendan Rodgers.
I think there's an argument for that. That may well be the case. We'll wait and see.
Yeah, I think they're going to shoot him though, because that's when new business comes in and goes, this is ours. We're going to take it. We want to play with these things. I've got new toys. So I'd be interested.
Not too many though. Who's you put in there then? If you're a Newcastle supporter at the moment, who?
Rodgers is favourite.
Brendan Rodgers.
Yeah.
Well, he's not going to jump. He's not going to jump from Leicester at the moment. Maybe end of the sea, but he's not foolish enough. Brendan Rodgers for me is someone who very much in terms of image, how his perception, how he's viewed in that respect. For him to jump, which what he'd have to do, he'd have to fight his way out of Leicester City. He'd have to go and strike guard and duty. That's very messy. Not too many top managers like to go down that particular route. So nobody in a job. I can't say anybody in a job.
I think you're right about that. But the only thing about Brendan Rodgers is how many jobs are there going to be that he is in the reckoning for? So he's had the Liverpool job, he's not getting that again, and because he's had the Liverpool job, he's not getting the Man United job. After that, how is he going to? He might get the Chelsea job at some point.
Yeah,
he's got a connection to the club.
I agree with you. I get a sense, don't know Brendan Rodgers too well, but I get a feeling looking at Brendan Rodgers, somebody really kind of ambitious and motivated and wants to operate at a higher level than Leicester, and feels as if he's good enough. And I think you're right, his options will be limited in that respect. I even think potentially he can go abroad, but in terms of what's available within the Premiership, I think you're right. Arsenal, Chelsea, you could make an argument.
Totally Arsenal.
But in terms of where Leicester are in a good place at the moment, you know what I mean? So he really feels if you're going to make that jump up.
Can I just ask you though, so if we go through those, right? So the Chelsea job, unfortunately Tuchel has done a great job. If you're like advising Rodgers at the moment, Tuchel's done a great job. He ain't going anywhere for at least 18 months. He's probably got 18 months of a window.
And that's change quickly though, Chelsea though.
It can change.
I still think that's an option.
Rodgers' stock could also be damaged as well in that time, and I mean they haven't started the season well. Just put it to you.
Let me go through the others. Spurs. Are you going to? Will you go? You go Daniel Levy? No thanks. For Brendan Rodgers, I want to sign this player. I want to sign this player. Levy like no. I want to sell this player. No, you can't because I like him. Not gonna be a great fit.
Yeah.
Arsenal. Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. He could definitely get the Arsenal job, but maybe Arteta's turned that round. Which kind of makes Newcastle all of a sudden like
stand alone though. Forget about the rule book when it comes. This is unprecedented. Really, is in terms of what's going to happen with Newcastle. People are like, was Newcastle step down? Look where they are. Leicester in a very good place, but the potential there to step into that football club, and
that's
absolutely, you know what I mean.
You have to be thinking about
the amount of investment that's going to be behind that must be attractive for any kind of manager of any stature. So I think you're right. I think Rodgers will be looking at that, and if he's got an inclination of phone call from somebody, an agent, look, are you interested in this job? I think the answer would be yes, I'm interested, but we need to park this till the end of the season. Yeah, you can have me, but we need to do this at the start of the season.
And if they say it's now or never, buddy,
I don't think he will.
Okay.
Unless Leicester City were prepared to accommodate him and say, well, absolutely, Brendan, we'll allow you to walk out of the football
50
club.
million quid.
That type of, potentially. And Brendan's I don't really want to go, but I've spoken to the chairman. He's accepted the 50 million. I don't understand in the Leicester. If they want me to move on, I'll do the decent thing. And
the best case scenario for Rodgers here is to kind of see how things play out over the next little while, and in around March or April announce that he's leaving Leicester for Newcastle United, knowing that he's going to be managing a team in the Premier League with a big kitty in the summer, rather than going there now and being like, oh crap, this playing group is not good enough to stay in the Premier League. Can I just put to you, second favourite, it's Frank Lampard.
Yeah, I wouldn't rule him out. I don't think it's helped. Obviously, things ended very quickly for him at Chelsea, but I had a bit of sympathy for him, to be honest with you. I personally would have stuck with him for a longer period of time. I like Lampard, to be honest with you. Always struck me as somebody like very astute, intelligent. I'm talking about football intelligence here more so than anything else. So I actually value him quite highly, and I think he actually will come back into the game. I'm not too sure. If I was looking at somebody of that ilk, for me, it's probably Gerrard gets the nod over Lampard. Now Lampard's out of a job at the moment, but I was looking at those two players at the moment. Gerrard's the one I'd lean towards with those particular two type of players, if that's what you were after. But I just think of, you know, the amount of investment they're going to put into that football club, you would just feel as if
Gerard not too inexperienced for.
Well, this is what I'm saying. You would imagine the chit chat, the advice that they're getting, the owners of that football club. If they have owners, it's a personal, you know, wealth fund. It's not actual links to the, as we know. But whoever those people are, Amanda Stavely or whoever it is who's up front, you would have thought the voice they're getting, and we need someone of real experience, stature here, somebody we can trust. You know, won't get knocked sideways in terms of the amount of work that needs to be done here. Yeah. So yeah, that lends itself more to a different type of manager. But yeah, I find it difficult at the moment to see. You know, Conte's out of a job, and I'm a huge fan of Conte, but I'm not too sure. I think they might well have to park it till the end of the season. But I think
Poch could get sacked by PSG before then, or something like crazy things are going to happen.
Things can change very quickly. We know what it's like manager turnover in that short period of time. But I think you're right with Rodgers, and I think he's very astute, Brendan Rodgers. I think he's going to have a difficult season at Leicester. I thought that before the season started. I thought it was a great window of opportunity for them the past 2 seasons.
Yeah, and then
in terms of that jump at the Champions League, and they came up short. They kind of blew it, to be honest with you. Last couple of months of the season. This is going to be more difficult for them. So I think maybe his standard will have dropped a little bit by the end of this year. Not as easy for him to make that bounce to one of those top clubs that we're talking about. So maybe Newcastle might be the next best vehicle for him to go and build something and build a team that can actually challenge for Champions League football. That might be the better option, a funny way for him. If he wants to, I want to manage in the Champions League consistently, Newcastle may be the better option for him rather than, fingers crossed, waiting for that potential job at Chelsea to come along over the next couple of years.
Okay, very quickly, rate these teams' survival chances out of 10. Are they going to survive? 7 games gone. So Norwich City, survival chances out of 10. Presumably it's 1 out of 10, 2 out of 10.
Minimal.
0. Okay.
1.
Newcastle.
Never.
Newcastle.
Yeah, I'd say 4.
Ooh,
still think the forwards wise, same argument last season. Just feels if they can get their forward Callum Wilson on the pitch, Alan saying Maximin Almiron, those type of players, just feels if they got enough goals in them to get themselves out of trouble.
4 out of 10 means you don't think they're going to survive. So you think they will survive.
Oh, you didn't stipulate that. You just asked me for marks out of 10.
Rate their team's survival chances out of 10. 10 out of 10 means they're going to survive.
If it's more likely than
it's a bad formula. It's a bad formula you've got there.
Well, surely if you think
wouldn't necessarily mean they're definitely going to go down. What about if I could put 3 at naught? They give 3 teams naught. That means then one doesn't go down. Is that the argument?
No, you
don't understand what you're saying.
Okay.
Wouldn't you just leave it till they're going to go down or not, rather than a marking system of 1 to 10? You're just confused, just muddying the waters.
Easier for us to sell on social. What? Okay, so Norwich are going to go down. Who else is going to go down? Burnley, Southampton, Leeds, Watford, Palace. Anybody else getting dragged in? Villa, Brentford, Brighton. They're not going to get dragged in.
No, I think what's happening at Villa is actually extraordinary, to be honest with you. One of the sides are really... Oh, your team actually wasn't saying that for that reason. No, really exciting team they're putting together up there. So no, I don't think they'll have any worries whatsoever. Yeah. Same old faces, the kind of half a dozen that you mentioned there. But like I said, I think it is dependent what happens between now and the end of the season, transfer window, etc. But yeah, it will be those teams. No, that doesn't help you. That's not the punch you were looking for. But.
Okay, let's try this one again then.
Who's going to win the Premiership?
No, okay, so
original one.
We're going to look at, because the transfer window is about to, the speculation certainly is going to ramp up immediately. It already has, but there's some of the big transfers that have already been made. Give us... marks out of 10 for these, right?
Oh,
Grealish to City.
Yeah, I'll give him a 7. I'll give him a 3 at the weekend, but I blame the manager for that, because he made that ludicrous decision again to throw him in as that false number 9. I just don't understand it. I really don't. He looked uncomfortable in the position in terms of his, positional sense, areas to pick up. He was struggling to get into the game. He was kind of wandering around the pitch for me, Grealish. You play him left with threes, he has done predominantly. You find a deeper midfield position for him. So I don't think he was actually helped the previous game against Liverpool. I thought his manager actually hung him out a little bit in the game against Liverpool. But I'm a huge fan of him, I'd have to say that.
Is there go on?
So what I was going to say, he needs to pick up the phone to his former Republic of Ireland teammate Callum Robinson and say, listen, Callum, how have you managed to adapt from a wide player to a goal scoring central player?
But I suppose that'd be my point. He has to adapt to playing that position. But why? He's got players who are Guardiola best suited to that position.
Is Guardiola playing a long game with somebody like that and saying, this is what this player... So the Ajax way was Bergkamp played right back for 3 or 4 games to teach him what the right back was thinking and what the movement was like. So the next time he played, he had a deeper understanding
but that's
of it.
like schoolboy academy football. There's a certain argument to that in terms of understanding certain positions, like player development at a young age. But this is like professional football that we're talking about.
No, but they get better. They get deeper understanding of what they're trying to do.
It takes time, but yeah, but could cost you. I mean, Manchester City could have won that game. Played Grealish off the left, play Foden off the right. Foden can impact the game from anywhere, and play Jesus down the middle of the pitch for me, give them a stronger chance of winning that game against them. They could have won that game.
I
Those
agree with
points
you.
could be
I'm trying to get into Guardiola's head to understand what he thinks. Like, why is he doing it?
I don't know what he's thinking. He's done it time and time again, particularly that false number 9 one. I don't understand it, because some players may just better suited to that position. Why not play better players who are better suited to that position than others?
And in form, Jesus had just scored the winner against Chelsea the previous week.
Yeah, look at Ferran Torres during the week, League of Nations, the goals he's scored playing in that.
Ferran Torres is amazing for Spain.
Yeah, but people say, another false number 9. But the more I look at him, I think
9,
more of a natural number 9 in terms of the positions, the runs that he's making.
Stick him in the team.
Into the box, yeah. But he can't get onto the pitch. He's got to look at Jack Grealish kind of zombie walking around in that area of the pitch, not understanding the role, what he's expected to do.
Okay, Ronaldo to Manchester United out of 10.
7.5.
Okay, why is he getting deducted marks?
Well, there was always going to be that quid pro quo, wasn't it? And you can see him obviously in terms of
who's the boss.
Sorry?
Who's the boss? Is that the quid pro quo?
No, a little bit of that, to be honest with you. You can sense a little bit of that bubbling under the surface. He's not happy to be sat on that bench at any time. He's not happy to be brought off the pitch at any particular time. The best example of that for me was when we brought off against Young Boys of Bern with kind of 15 minutes to go. Probably should have been brought off at half time with the sending off they had in that game. And Solskjaer literally like tripping over himself to try and explain himself, apologising as he was walking down the touchline. That's not a good look for me, like, you know what I mean? And they can't have Tim in. He's a big enough personality in the dressing room, and the likes of Pogba, Sanchez had a difficult start there. I think you're right. I think
but Kenny, he made that speech and nobody had desserts, so therefore it must be a winner. No, 10 out of 10.
Winner. Be careful with the sprinkling of whatever you put on your chicken in your dinner, sort of thing.
Yeah,
I think it's fascinating. Manchester United, to be honest with you, it's not going to be difficult. It's going to be a difficult dressing room to manage if things start to go a little bit skew with during the course of the season.
Varane to Man United out of 10.
Varane.
Yeah,
like 8. Yeah, pretty much as expected. And that first game against Wolves just like strikes me as like a ballerina. The way he kind of moves over the ground, doesn't he? Like he moves on the top of his toes, and it's all a bit seamless. No, I think he's strengthened the team. So yeah, good signing for me.
Okay, he's a little bit injury. His injury profile is not amazing, and he's going to be out for a little while.
A couple of weeks, like yeah.
So that
doesn't help.
No, it's definitely a little kind of asterisk there. Just as the season goes on, will he play 20 games? Will he play 30 games? Will he play 40 games? There's a big difference, you know.
Yeah, there is. Yeah. I think he needs to play those 40 games like you're talking about, because there's a small soft centre to that Manchester United back four when he doesn't play.
But they're back to square one now. He's out for a few weeks. They said so. I mean, it's all of a sudden Maguire's out as well, or possibly. So it's going to be very interesting to see if it's just like Groundhog Day for Manchester United.
We've got Leicester at 3 o'clock on Saturday for Manchester United, Burnley at 3 o'clock for City on Saturday, and the next one is Jadon Sancho. What do you make of Jadon Sancho's transfer to Manchester United so far?
Yeah, it's been a bit of a struggle for him. Yeah, I wouldn't give up on him. Yeah, I watched a lot of him in Germany. He was like absolutely fantastic, but would be a basic thing to say, but just like a step up in level to a certain extent, maybe even expectation. So he struggled that a little bit. He's found it tough. Felt sympathy for him. We're talking about the young boys, the game Wan-Bissaka got sent off. That must have hurt him getting pulled straight away 35 minutes in. I looked at that. You're not talking about managers' big decisions. I mean, the mentality of the player kind of struggling, got into a new club, struggling a little bit, is real frustration there. You're trying to find a little bit of form. You need minutes on the pitch. 35 minutes into that particular game, sending off, you got to whip somebody out, woof, you get the hook. You know what I mean? And I just thought in terms of even Solskjaer, he needed to stay on the pitch just in terms of his mindset to keep him in a good place. That would have hurt. No player likes getting the fish hook 35 minutes in, regardless of the circumstances. Like, so that was very interesting to me in terms of like him getting hooked there. That wouldn't have helped him. So he's struggling. He is scratching around a little bit for form. There's no doubt about that. I mean, I like Sancho, don't get me wrong, and I think they are strengthened with him in the squad. But again, before they signed Sancho, if you'd have said to me 85 million to spend, where are you going to spend it? Centre midfield. Go big. You need a central midfielder, because at the time, well, what about right-sided midfielder? You got Greenwood there. You got Greenwood there who could not easily operate it off the right hand side. Martial, Rashford, that we spoke about, Cavani there as well. Daniel James was still at the football club, so plenty of options there. For me, was crying out for that holding midfield. It didn't happen. They spent the money on Sancho. Are they stronger because of it? Yes, but he needs to play better than he is at the moment, clearly.
He may well be a signing for the medium term, but Solskjaer lives in every week as a referendum on him. That's the situation he finds himself in. So, I see why you would take the opportunity to buy a player of that quality, but they haven't helped him in his integration. They've picked him in the wrong position a couple of times, and
he played off the left predominantly, isn't he? Most of the time at Dortmund he played right of a 3. You know what I mean?
So out of 10 at the moment?
Oh, so 5.5, 6 Sancho at the moment, yeah.
All right. And Lukaku, how impressed are you by Lukaku's early signs at Chelsea? They've got Brentford on Saturday at 5:30, so all the big guns on Saturday.
Yeah, hasn't scored a huge amount of late, but he is what he is, Lukaku. It's what it says on the tin, pretty much. When you look at Lukaku, if you look at the types of goals that he scored, he scored for Milan over the past couple of seasons under Conte. Conte got the very best out of him, but he actually built the team around him, even in terms of how Inter Milan played, leaning towards a more counter-attacking game, because it best suited Lukaku in terms of hitting teams in the counter-attack, getting him running down the channels. But if you look at the goals that he scores predominantly, it doesn't overthink things. It's like shift, shot. When he gets into that position, you need that type of Robbie Fowler type finish, a little kind of bit of a dink, or a little bit more of a creative edge. You don't get that too much from Lukaku, but I still like him. Absolutely, Chelsea are strengthened with him coming into the squad, and he could still make the difference, because for me they're in the shake-up, Chelsea, with Liverpool and Manchester City for that title.
Can I run one hot take by you? I mean, we're not on air or anything, so nobody's going to hear this, but Timo Werner to break out from here to the end of the season and actually go close to matching Lukaku goals-wise.
Match Lukaku.
Maybe matching Lukaku is an overstatement.
Owen loves him some Timo Werner.
Don't say it. If it's an overstatement, don't say it.
Have a very respectable season, as in teens.
He's watering this down.
Hit the teens
that
goals-wise.
watering can. Hold on. Look, keep going.
I'm going
to hose it down now, your original statement.
Hit the teens with goals in the Premier League this season.
Timo Werner, not to totally stink.
Yeah.
It'd actually be very good.
I've been a little bit disappointed, to be honest with you, in terms of his contribution while he's been at the football club. And to be honest with you, if if somebody had said to Chelsea started the season, give them the money you paid for him, I'd have taken it.
Newcastle, come on down. Would you like a little bit of Timo Werner action? Come on.
Did you see him the last Chelsea game? I mean, way more of a goal threat than Lukaku.
Let's forget about the previous. Let's forget the previous 30. Let's just focus.
That's why it's a hot take, Kenny. I'm jumping to conclusions based on one game.
Now look, he'll be around the squad and he'll play his fair share of the games, but his finishing was what let me down last season. Finishing was dreadful.
I think with Lukaku, though,
you've got to be better than that. You've got to be more clinical than that in terms of where opportunities presented himself. He looks as if almost he lost his confidence last year in around the kind of penalty box. So I wouldn't give up on him. Don't get me wrong. And I think he's a good option to have around the squad in terms of the qualities which he has, as opposed to other forward players. Obviously Lukaku in particular, but Lukaku's going to be the focal point for that attack. And when I think about players who are going to operate, going to link up with him around them, I'm thinking about Mount, Pulisic, Ziyech, those type of players. I'm looking at those type of combinations that will naturally work, rather than maybe a Lukaku or a Werner, combination up front.
So no is the answer to my question. That's fine, Kenny.
Last one.
Stupid question.
Who's your number one must-watch Premier League team this season so far? Who's been the most enjoyable team to watch?
Good question. Do you know what? Villa. I didn't play well last week, to be honest with you. A bit of a drop off, wasn't it?
Disappointing. Because it really felt like the Man United game was a corner turned, and then
I've watched them a couple of games. They've been really exciting. Really, some very talented forward players now. The money again invested in the summer, because some really strong. Watkins, obviously, Ings has come in. Traore. Some outstanding talent, solid. Talking about balance, now we're talking about even the Ireland team early on, that kind of getting that healthy balance in the team, attacking, kind of defending, nice little balance in that Aston Villa team, youth as well, a lot of youth, energy, legs in the team as well. So they're the ones for me. I look at them actually quite excited when I watch them play. They're a good team. They're a good watch, yeah.
Just like the Republic of Ireland, we've come full circle. Kenny, good stuff. Keep the blue jersey.
Haven't got one.
Keep Kenny.
Have we got a contact? Can we get one of those? How'd you get one of those jerseys? Can you walk into wherever it is?
Republic of Ireland captain issues, come and get me. No, they were
operating in town.
They were limited edition. There was only 2,000 of them made, I think.
No way.
Yeah,
that was smart. that they're even hard to get.
I'll be amazed there's not one hanging up in this studio in a week. So I'll be very disappointed. Your connection. Have you burnt all your bridges with the association? Or
No.
We had Johnny Courtney on the show actually talking about it.
Designed it and made it, yeah.
Since everybody
get
agrees,
me hands on one, I'll bring it in. If I can get me hands on one, I'll bring it in. Don't rule me out.
Republic of Ireland captain Kenny Cunningham issues come and get me plea to blue jersey.
just pushing kids out of the way at the front, trying to get Callum Robinson's jersey at the next home international.
This is the transfer gossip we all needed. Kenny, good stuff. Thanks a million. One last question. Paul on YouTube wants to know, would Roy Keane be in with a shout for the Newcastle gig?
That's to you, Kenny.
On that note, we're going to take a quick break. OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. We are talking to Nicole Turner about her silver medal in the Paralympics and the importance of volunteers next.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
The Football Pod with Paddy and Andy, our new weekly Gaelic football show with Paddy Andrews and Andy Moran.
I was good at it, absolutely good at it. I'll never forget the final. Glucko kicks the point against Kerry. I didn't even go, but I watched it at home on my own. I actually cried at the end of it. I was good at it because I'd been on that journey and I would have been very close with some of the guys in that team, and it was an incredible moment. It was one of the most iconic moments for Dublin GAA. I had nothing to do with it. I'd let myself down and didn't contribute, and I just basically mugged myself off really more than anything.
Download the OTB Sports app and subscribe to the GAA podcast feed now.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
It is 20 minutes past 9 this morning here on OTB AM. We're delighted to be joined now by EBS ambassador and Paralympic silver medalist Nicole Turner, along with her childhood coach and long-time swimming volunteer Eimear Mathews, following the final call for nominations for the 2021 Federation of Irish Sport Volunteers in Sport Awards, which is proudly supported by EBS. The awards will see EBS and the Federation of Irish Sport hero the work of volunteers from right around the country who go above and beyond every day to ensure that sport and physical activity takes place in Ireland. To nominate an everyday hero and to be with a chance of winning €1,000 for your local sports club, just visit volunteersinsport.ie. Nominations can be made by a club, an individual or a sporting body, and the closing date for nominations is this Sunday, October 17th. So it's really easy. Go down to volunteersinsport.ie, nominate somebody who you think deserves to win, and you could be given the chance of winning €1,000, all sponsored by EBS. Now, Nicole and Eimear, good morning to you both. Nicole, how are you getting on?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well. Talk to us a little bit about Eimear, because this is all about volunteers and the roles that they play in sport. Why was Eimear important in your career?
I suppose if it wasn't for Eimear, I wouldn't have learned how to swim. So I'm 19 now. I started out with Piranha Swim Club when I was 5, so back 14 years ago. After I finished all my swimming lessons, I decided to join a club. And the local club here, Port Arlington Leisure Centre, was Piranha Swim Club. And it turned out Eimear was the coach of that, but she did it voluntary. So I stayed with Eimear for about 7 years, and then I moved on to a different club.
Right, so very formative years, the bit where you get good at swimming, learn not to sink, and then learn to be competitive and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I did learn how to swim in a few swimming lessons, but Eimear was the really one who did get me in the pool and show me all the skills, and I suppose that's where the seed was planted, and then there was a long journey ahead of me, but Eimear started that journey for me. Did you start competing what age would your first meets have been? So my first ever competition was in 2009 at the World Dwarf Games, and this was the games, it was kind of like a dwarf Paralympics, but nowhere near as serious. It's a games held every 4 years for all dwarfs around the world, and it includes all sorts of sports: swimming, athletics, team sports, cycling, anything you can think of. And it turned out in 2009 it was actually in Belfast, so my parents just decided, you know what, let Nicole go in, see what she can do, and then just so I could compete against people my own size. And then after that, I actually came away with 8 medals. Wow. 5 gold, 2 silver and a bronze. And 4 of the gold medals were from swimming. So I think that was when something, I guess, was thought about. Right, wow. Eimear, that must have been a pretty special time then, when you've got this sense that
this is a pretty good swimmer, and then finally the competition happens, you're like, well, we've got a really good swimmer, it turns out.
Yeah, and she's very modest because she also won the Margaret Scott Memorial Trophy that day for being such an impressive swimmer. And we all knew we had magic on our hands then when Nicole competed and won so well that day. Yeah, she's just, I suppose, to be an athlete, a successful athlete, you need to have that drive and that hunger, and that's exactly what Nicole has.
As a volunteer teaching kids how to swim, Eimear, like, you really have no clue which of these will go on to be any of the swimmers who are going to represent Ireland. Some of them might just swim for the rest of their lives as a fun, and you've kind of got to be cognizant of that at some level. It's like you don't want to turn the people off the sport by being too aggressive, but you need to help the people who do have the chance to go on to greatness as well. How do you make that balance and just keep that tension, in your own head?
I suppose in our club we try and help them realise their potential and let the children lead the way, as in, like, they're the bosses to a certain extent, and it's all about being happy and being constructive in your criticism to children and to adults. But it has to be a happy place for children to learn to swim, and when you do see somebody that has that potential, then you just encourage them. And Nicole had that potential straight away. And I suppose, with clear, consistent communication always with the swimmers, and they become very confident. They become competent, and then they're happy swimmers,
Is that the thing that motivated you a lot around that time, Nicole? Or is it the sense of, oh my God, I've got to shed a load of medals here, I've got to keep doing this thing? What was the big thing that drove you around that period of time?
No, absolutely. Like, I think at that age as well, being a coach for Eimear, like, she doesn't want to, I wouldn't have wanted, like, as Eimear said, I wanted it to be fun. I didn't want, like, I was 7 years of age. I didn't really see a big serious side of swimming at that age. So I just wanted it to go to a place where I had fun, where I enjoyed it, and I wanted to go. I didn't want to see it as being a chore or something I had to do work for. I wanted to go and meet new friends, spend some time with friends, and just have fun in the water. And that's exactly what Eimear made it for the whole 7 years I was in the club.
Do you still feel that, Nicole? Do you still feel that it's fun?
Oh, absolutely. I think if it wasn't fun, I wouldn't do it. Like, it is. Looking back now, it is a very serious sport from what I did see it being, 10, 12 years ago. But I think now it is serious, but then, like, the likes of winning a Paralympic silver medal and getting to travel across the world, that is the fun side. So the hard work does pay off. So I think if it wasn't fun, I wouldn't do it.
And from your perspective, Eimear, is it possible to mould those two things, the really high level of performance with enjoying your craft?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, you have to just absolutely love it, and love winning. And I mean, we all know that Nicole has felt the agony of losing races too, and she's also had the thrill of winning races. And you take it as it comes, but I think she's very happy in winning, and well, obviously not so happy in losing, but you learn from a loss, and you learn to progress, and you learn what you did wrong, and you have to love it to get up there. I mean, I think this year was probably the hardest year for all athletes, not just swimming, obviously for all sports out there. And for Nicole to go to Tokyo and get onto those blocks without her family and without her friends, she's the bravest person I know, and you have to love it, don't you, to be able to do that. And it paid off, Yeah,
it totally did. When did you start taking it totally seriously, Nicole? When did you start dreaming about Paralympic Games? And I'm kind of interested in that period where, the rest of us are kind of fluting around doing everything, and you're like, actually, I'm going to get up early and I'm going to do my swimming before school.
I think when I went to the World Warp Games in 2009, I actually met Ellie Simmons, and the year before the Games, Ellie had just won her first gold medal in Beijing. So I thought, like, she was small just like me. I wanted to be like her one day. But like, I was a 7-year-old. I didn't really think anything of that then. But then when I left Eimear in 2014, I moved to Laois Marlins in Portlaoise, and that was when I'd say the real swimming, the serious swimming did start. That was when I was getting up before school, swimming, going home and swimming after school as well. So I think then like that it did get a lot harder, and like it was still fun, but it started to get a bit more serious then. But that was when I saw the serious side of swimming, and I thought, God, this is all going to pay off. I do want to go to the Paralympics now.
Those games, the World Dwarf Games in Belfast, sound like they were kind of an important moment, almost more in retrospect, where you can kind of trace back something growing inside you. How important was it, that representation? Obviously the previous year you'd seen something on TV in Beijing that was important, and your mum and dad, I presume, were like, look at this is interesting, and they make the decision to bring you to Belfast, and it goes so well for you. But just that question of representation and actually seeing people like you competing and being part of that, how important was that for your development as an athlete and as a person?
Oh, it's massive. Like as Eimear said, I have experienced success, but I've also experienced, well, I won't call it failure, but like before I went to the World Dwarf Games, I would enter into swimming competitions like across the local clubs, but the girls were twice the size of me, so like they'd be a good body length ahead of me, and like back now I do it the whole time, and I think nothing of it because I've achieved what I want to achieve. But I think back then, all I saw was I wanted to win, and like when I didn't win, it was heartbreaking. So I think when I went to the World Dwarf Games and I was competing against people my own size, and everyone who had experienced basically what I'd experienced, I think it made a massive impact, and it kind of told me that everything was going to be okay. There are hundreds and thousands of people around the world just like me, and they seem to go on and live their life. And like Ellie Simmons, she went to a Paralympics and won her Paralympic medal. So I think that's where I saw that the dream could be real.
Eimear, a lot of people are wrestling with time deficits and busyness and the sense that they actually can't get involved. They'd like to get involved, but there's a blockage there. And sometimes it's excuses that we all make to ourselves to tell ourselves that we're far too busy to be involved. Sometimes it's a genuine fear of not knowing how to get involved in the first place. Do you have any advice for anybody watching this morning who would like to get involved in whatever it is that their local club is or that their kids are involved in, but just can't make that first leap?
Yeah, just get off the sofa and go up to that coach, person that's involved, chairperson, secretary, it doesn't matter, and just say you want to get involved. Because a coach can impact more young people in a year than an average person does in their lifetime. So if you feel that you have something that will impact a person's life, give positivity, get them off their butts, get them moving, go out there and do it. Because what's the point in sitting at home regretting it? You know? That's my message. And this is such a fantastic award. There are 32 counties in Ireland, 32 clubs are going to receive €1,000 from this partnership with the EBS and the Federation of Irish Sport. And it's the third year they've done this. So I really say get out there and nominate your local club hero. And if you want to be that hero, you can't do it if you're sitting at home. And it is such a fantastic feeling being a volunteer. Coaching is so fantastic. You kind of feel like people think that, you know, I'm going to be used. It's got nothing to do with that. It's about how you feel about coaching. Like for me, my thank you is kids smiling and being happy and getting their own little bit of achievement. You know, if somebody learns to do a handstand and they've been trying for ages, I'll go home and think, hey, Mary learned to do a handstand today. That is just fantastic. So it's just the tiny little things. It's absolutely wonderful. So just get out there and become a volunteer.
It's a very powerful message, Eimear. Thanks a million for giving that to us this morning. Nicole, we haven't spoken to you since you got back from the Paralympics. How are you feeling now about the whole thing?
Now it's thankfully settling down. I think getting to a Paralympics is a massive achievement, but I think getting a medal is another achievement in itself. And like going to Rio, I was half a second away from a bronze medal in Rio. And when I look back, there was disappointment, but then I thought I can't really be disappointed with that. It was my first ever Paralympic Games and I was top 5 in the world. But then going into Tokyo, like, I think I wouldn't say there was a lot. Well, I'd say there was a lot more pressure on me going into Tokyo because, like, I'd won a world bronze medal in 2019, so people were kind of like, I have stepped up on the world stage before. So going into Tokyo, I wouldn't say there was pressure and expectation, but I think it was more hope from myself and everyone else that I was going to win a medal. But I didn't really think anything of it until the race day, and then I think it gave me confidence when just after the heats, I qualified second fastest into the final, of which I thought I would have qualified third, if not fourth. So I think from the morning sim, I kind of knew if I gave it everything, I was in with a good chance for the medal.
I'm sure winning the medal was amazing, Nicole, but nothing endorses an athlete more than two counties fighting over the identity of an athlete. So tell us, how did it feel to be in the middle of this diplomatic tension between County Laois and County Offaly?
I mean, I try not get involved. Although my brother made it a bit worse. Well, he proved it when he wore an Offaly jersey on the TV. I say, like, technically I do live in Offaly, of which when my mum and dad bought the house 20 years ago, they got told it was Laois until they saw Offaly flags up when there was a county final on or something, and they only found out then that it was Offaly. We get our post quicker when we say Laois. But we're about 200 meters from the river, so we're right on the border. So whichever county wants me, they can claim me.
It's a great thing to be for people to be fighting over it, and well deserved as well. Nicole, great to have you with us again, and thanks a million, and congratulations on your medal and everything else that's coming your ways too. And Eimear, I think that was one of the most passionate and best exhortations we've ever had for people to get involved. So thanks to both of you this morning. It was a brilliant piece, and best of luck with everything. Cheers.
Thank you.
So the volunteersinsport.ie is the website, and as Eimear pointed out there, they're going to give away €32,000, €1,000 to each of the counties. All you got to do is make sure that your nominations are in before this Sunday, October the 17th. OTB AM brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. On OTB Sports Radio today, OTB Gold at 1 o'clock is Sonia O'Sullivan. Mount Rushmore is North Dublin. We split the county. Our retro panel is How We Coach Kids, very appropriately, at 4 o'clock. And OTB Gold tonight is Emmanuel Petit from 6. On tomorrow's show, we're going to hear from Keith Wood and much more as well. Right now, we're bringing you Hannah Tyrrell on the Football Pod. You can get that full podcast available exclusively right now on the OTB Sports app.
You're welcome back to episode 23 of the Football Pod with Paddy and Andy, and I'm delighted to welcome our next guest to the show, Hannah Tyrrell. You're very welcome. How are you doing?
I'm good, guys. Thanks for having me.
Hannah, you've got an incredibly interesting sporting background. An Irish rugby international for the last 6 or 7 years. You've played soccer and won an FAI Women's Cup, and you played in the WNL in the first season with Rovers back in 2011 and 12. You're also a Dublin footballer, which is the reason you're on the Football Pod with us this week. But you've had two acts to your Dublin career. You had the goalkeeping days in the early days in 2010s, and then you're back after a professional sabbatical with the Irish rugby team as a forward this year. So we might just jump in to this year and April of this year with the Irish rugby team. You retired as a rugby player. Can you talk to us about that? How did that come about?
Yeah, I suppose COVID had a big part to play in my retirement, or my decision to retire. We were meant to play in the Rugby World Cup, which was meant to be on, I think actually it was meant to start yesterday. And unfortunately, COVID got that postponed by a year. And for me, I'd always planned on retiring after that World Cup if we had made it with the Irish team. And when COVID pushed it back a year, and I think we found out it was probably in February or March, we found out it was being postponed. For me, I kind of had to sit down with my now wife and discuss kind of the implications that would have for us, you know, as a family, and all the plans that we had made, you know, what we were hoping to do for post World Cup and post retirement. And for me, like playing with Irish rugby for the last number of years was incredible, but it was very time consuming. You know, it's an amateur sport, and you know, you're working Monday to Friday, and then for the most part you're in camp all weekend from Friday to Sunday, not seeing anybody else, and that takes its toll. And I had to think about, can I do that and give that commitment for the next 18 months or so, you know, to get to that World Cup? And at the end of the day, the answer was no. You know, I had a lot of commitments. I had plans I wanted to do, and I really wanted to start focusing on my job, my career as a teacher, because I got into that late again, partly because I had been with Irish rugby in the sevens team, you know. So for me, I decided I'd play the Six Nations and see how I felt afterwards and make that decision. And I went into that Italy game, which was the last game for us at Six Nations, knowing that this potentially could be my last game, and to enjoy it. And when the game ended, I was in floods of tears, even though we won. And, you know, I took a couple of weeks after that to ponder my decision, but that kind of just sat with me, that it felt right, that something inside me knew that was the end for me. And I was very happy for it to end that way. You know, things would have been different had the World Cup been played this year. Would I have stayed on? Absolutely, but it's not to be. And you know, look, I'm very proud of the rugby career I had. Never in a million years did I think I'd ever pick up a rugby ball, let alone play for Ireland, you know, in the two codes and go to World Cups and stuff. So yeah, it's been something else, you know.
Like, and I'm going to circle back to the end of your rugby career in a moment, but let's go to the start, because I couldn't believe it. Like, so just for anyone who's listening in and may not be fully aware of your story, you played a lot of football underage with Dublin.
Yeah.
You won an under-16 All-Ireland. You won a minor All-Ireland, beating Cork in both of those games. You came into the senior panel, and you're in and around the senior team around that time as well. You played a bit of soccer. I think you played a bit of soccer in college. And in 2013-14, you decided to pick up a rugby ball for the first time. And six months later, you're a professional athlete.
Yeah, look, it is a bit unbelievable, I suppose, and incredible. But I suppose at the time, women's rugby in Ireland wasn't very big. There wasn't a very big player pool, and they were always, particularly the rugby seven side of things, were always looking for talent outside of the rugby playing pool. But a friend of mine who I knew through GAA and who was trying to break into the Irish squad herself mentioned to me that, you know, like, rugby sevens is coming into the Olympics, and Ireland will, you know, have opportunities there, and that you should come out and play a bit of rugby. And I just went down to club training in Old Belvedere one night because I was going to UCD and I knew a few people there, and I fell in love with it. And the first year, actually, Old Belvedere were stacked with Irish internationals, so I actually played with the second team for the whole season, and didn't really have a clue what I was doing, just running away from people and, you know, trying to tackle everything and anything, but not really with much technique.
Mayo career
there. You know, and yeah, I played the league there, and then, you know, February came, and Dublin came calling again, and I ended up back in goal with them for the league campaign, and we reached the league final. But a couple of weeks before that, I got a random phone call midweek one time from a guy called Stan McDowell, who was like the talent ID coach, asking me to come in and give sevens a go and come into their setup. And I hadn't a clue what I was doing in there, but something obviously showed, because they offered me a contract, and it was just an opportunity I couldn't turn down.
And like, it led to an incredible journey over the next couple of years. Like, you traveled the world as a professional athlete.
Yeah, like, it's absolutely mad. You know, for me, it was that opportunity. Like, it was the reason why I took it. You know, I was going to be able to travel the world, you know, get paid for it because it was an Olympic sport, and play for my country, potentially play in the Olympics. And growing up, you know, I was soccer mad growing up, and that was never really a thing for girls and young girls and women to be able to go off and play professionally. It was very, very rare back then. And like, for me to have this opportunity was a bit of a no-brainer, you know. So I thought it'd be a year or two, until maybe after 2016 Olympics. And sure, here we are in 2021, and I'm just finished. So, you know, it's been crazy. Like, yeah, it's just mad to think back on it, and all that I've achieved in that sport that I genuinely never thought I'd ever play.
And just moving into that, Hannah,
like then you go, when you do like get to the 15s, you end up playing 10 and 15. Now, for a person that doesn't know very much about rugby, like they seem to be the positions where you need to have such an understanding of what's going on, position-wise, where you need to be. How did you make, like, that's even a bigger transition from going from zero to playing to being the main player on the team. How did that come about?
Yeah, so always, I'd been playing sevens for the majority of my time there, but I did jump back and forth into the 15s team when the schedule allowed. But I was mainly a winger and a fullback, because I was quite fast. But I suppose kind of Adam Griggs came along, and I had played 10 for him years ago with Leinster, because Nora Stapleton, the then Irish out half, got an injury, and he had kind of asked me to play there, and I played there for, I think it was like 3 games, and he kind of mentioned me, I think when we look at moving you to 10, about a year. This was kind of just before COVID hit, so end of 2019, he was like, we're looking at you for the next season for playing 10. It'll take a bit of adjustment, and it took a lot of adjustment, but it was just something he kind of floated to me, and I felt like I had the confidence to try it. I suppose part of the reason probably was because we had a pretty stacked back three, the rise of Bevan Parsons, Eimear Constance being a long-term standout there. I always knew Emily Murphy-Crowe would start to shine in 15s once she got her chance. So I'm guessing, Griggsy himself knew that he couldn't fit us all there, so he had to make some changes, and 10 was a position that needed filling. And with me potentially coming over to 15s long term after I was finishing with 7s, he had a gap to fill, and I was the one to step up.
And your kicking ability would have obviously helped you as well, did you know?
Yeah, look, I for me, most people probably wouldn't agree, but for me, kicking is my favourite part of the whole game. I absolutely love kicking off the tee, kicking out of hand, and I was constantly practicing it, and it absolutely helped. I've probably gotten in trouble a few times for my GAA style kicking in rugby. They do not go hand in hand, but it works for me sometimes.
When did that part of the game click with you? When, like, at what stage does it click with you? You're like, right, I'm getting there, like with the kicking, I've mastered it, because you have gone from 0 to being a professional so quickly.
Yeah, like in 7s, it takes a while, because in 7s it's very, very rare to kick, particularly the way the Ireland team play. Like, we never kicked away. Possession is way too valuable. But for me, it was always an opportunity. There's so much space back there, and like you strike a rugby ball nice and sweetly, it's going to bounce perfectly for you. And for me, it's always afforded me many opportunities. I've been playing club there the last couple of weeks, and there's nothing nicer than a little chip in behind, or a kick cross field, and somebody catches it like hand in hand. It's very like just passing to a teammate in GAA, and I think for some people it never comes into their head, but I think with me, with my GAA background, kicking element is a big thing, and I'm always looking for it. Probably giving away all my secrets now for the next club game, but sure, look.
Hannah, like, in terms of, you get the sense, even from listening to you, it was such a massive decision with the timing of the World Cup, that the World Cup is obviously the pinnacle for you guys, and having to wait another 18 months, it's such a long time. Like, say you and your wife and your career, you have so much plans, and I get the sense it was a really, really difficult decision to kind of say, like, you finish the Six Nations, and it's like, can I do this for another, what turns out, probably 18 months? Was it at that time, were you thinking, there's an opening that I may go back and end up playing GAA with Dublin? Did that help soften the blow, or was it solely, kind of a personal life decision or did GAA come into it even at that point? Did that make it easier to kind of step away, saying, well, I might be able to join this brilliant Dublin team at the minute, who are going for their own bit of history in terms of the 5 in a row? Did that come into play at that time?
Like, not at that time. It definitely wasn't in my decision to retire, but like, I had been playing GAA, and I had, even throughout my years with rugby, myself and Lindsay Pete would always be joking and messing around and wearing our Dublin jerseys to Ireland training and stuff like that. And I always had plans, or maybe not plans, but ambitions to get back to Dublin one day. Whether that would happen or not, I really didn't know. But when COVID hit in March 2020, and rugby was stood down for a very long time, Club GAA started back up, and I went and started playing with Nafina GAA, which are my now local club, and I had the best fun, you know, playing club football with no worries, no stress, no nothing going on, and absolutely fell in love with the game all over again. And it'd been such a long time since I played, you know, and such a long time since I'd played without there being any stress or any pressure or anything like that, and absolutely loved it. And I ran into Mick Bowen in a gym shop. I think it was like that October or something like that.
Sounds like Mick.
Yeah, really randomly. And he was like, "Oh, I've been meaning to get onto you." And I was like, "Well, I do have a phone. You could have just rang." You know,
It sounds like Tim Gavin here.
Yeah, like
gotta ring it.
Yeah, like, you know, and but he was like very keen for me to come into the setup and give me an opportunity, you know, and I suppose that probably ignited something in me, like, oh, geez, yeah, I'd love to come back in, but I obviously have commitments. And I did say to him, look, I'm planning on retiring after the World Cup. So if you're still around and you still want me by then, like, you know, I'll happily come in and give it a go. But I said to him, that could be a full year from now, you know. It mightn't be a couple of weeks. Our qualifiers were then meant to be in December. And I was like, look, if we don't qualify in December, like, sure, I'll be out in the February, but again, it could be a whole year, like, kind of thing. And he was grand with that, and he left me off and whatever else. And then, I was playing a bit of, like, club football again, just the odd training here and there, but I was fully flat out with the rugby and planning on playing a bit of club then this summer again. And when the retirement came in, I was like, geez, I'll potentially have a free summer here if
What'll I do?
I take this route, you know, and I'd like, it'd be great to play a bit of club football, but I thought it might be too late for Dublin. You know, because they usually start much earlier, but with the league and all that being postponed with COVID, that gave me a huge opportunity. I ran up Mick, and the rest is history, I suppose. And here we are, like, you know, and I loved it. I loved every minute.
I'm intrigued, and kind of, you've kind of finished. You played with Dublin earlier on, where they were kind of competing for All Ireland, but they obviously got over the line in 2010, and they did a bit of heartbreak against that brilliant Cork team. Then you step away for 7 years from the ladies inter-county game.
Yeah.
And the strides that the game has made, and I would say Mick would have been a big part with the Dublin ladies team. And you look at the final this year, and heartbreak for us losing that game, and fair play, Tommy's delighted with me. but the quality of the game, the skill levels, everything about it, it's just a brilliant, brilliant game. Is there a massive difference? Did you feel when you went back in with the girls at the start of the summer, having been there before, kind of thinking, oh, look, and obviously with your professional athlete background, that gives you a bit of confidence going back in with the team. How big a difference was it, or how did you just settle? No one knew. You probably just settled in the first week, did you?
I don't know how confident.
After 2 trains.
I don't know how confident I was. Like, look, for me, I suppose, when I went in, thankfully, there was still a couple of the girls that I had played with in 2014, you know, the Lindsay Davies, Sinead Ahern, Niamh McAvoy and all them, Goldie, were still all around, which was great. But the very first night I strolled in and I was like, oh, what am I getting myself in for? You know, Mick had just said, come on down, be grand, be grand. And I walked into a 1 kilometre fitness test, and I couldn't believe all the stuff. Like, you know, and I was like, surely I'm not going to have to do this. I just started. And it was like, in you go, off you go. Like, no rest or, you know, nothing, like, and I was like, here we go. But yeah, look, to be honest, we're actually training in the same facilities up in where we were in 2014. So like, that was actually like quite nice, and having that routine, and I knew exactly where I was going and what to be doing. But I think the biggest change, and you mentioned it there, it's the skill level across the board, not just in our team, you know, across the board. There are just players coming like out of the woodwork with this insane talent and ability, you know. And you had players before, don't get me wrong, like, that were incredibly, incredibly talented, but in terms of just the general skill, I think the biggest thing that has improved is the kicking, you know, and 100%. The women's, and it's a big thing that Mick has pushed for with our team. Obviously you can move the ball a lot quicker and play at a much higher tempo, you know, but your kicking has to be accurate, and it's a little bit more of a risky game. But I just think the reading of the game and the game awareness has massively improved. That little bit of bump and physicality has been really good for the game. I think it's made some great watching when it's reffed correctly, or kind of allowed to flow a little bit. But
brilliant game, yeah.
Yeah, like for me with Dublin, like we always had pretty good setups and stuff like that, but just this year it was a level above. Like we had every single thing we could ever need, but what I loved about it the most was that we still really stayed true to that amateur side of things. We were still able to go off and enjoy ourselves and relax a little bit and have a joke and have a laugh, but then we were serious when we needed to. And while like it was really intense in training and stuff, it never for me was stressful. It was really, really enjoyable. And I honestly just loved it from that very, very first training session. Because my first training session, like I actually said to Mick, like, I'm not sure how I'm going to get on here. Like, I don't know if you're going to want me for the summer, like I don't know what's going on here. I wasn't in the setup. I was just kind of giving it a go. So I was really nervous and afraid of what the girls were going to think and how I was actually going to be compared to these girls who had played it for literally week in, week out for the last few years. And I hadn't kicked a ball in 6+ years,
You did all right, Hannah, in the end.
Yeah, you didn't do it.
You lit up the summer.
Well, I have to say. Yeah.
But Hannah, on that, right, so you go back in. I remember Gavin Duffy joined us in 2014, ex-Irish fullback, Connacht fullback. And I remember he joined us, and I remember him just commenting on the fitness levels, and not like that we were insanely fit or anything, but just the transfer between rugby to Gaelic football. And we had Conor McKenna last week who played Australian rules, and he came back, and the way he described Australian rules then into Gaelic football, and he even said, I think, lads, that he's not at his peak fitness level yet where he can go further. Did you find it a strange transfer, just the way the game does be played? Did you find that difficult when you came back in?
Yeah, absolutely. And like when you hit a Dublin setup, like there's no let up from anyone, and we play a lot of challenge games between ourselves, there's huge competition, and I kept getting caught out when the ball went out of play. Because like for me in rugby, it's you turn around, you set up what you're doing, either in attack or defence, and you've 30 seconds, a minute or so. But in GAA, the ball's in within about 5 seconds, and I was literally caught every single time for the first probably 2 or 3 weeks. And I'd say Mick was like, what are we doing here, like with her? Because I was just getting, like I was well able to play when I was there, but those kind of little lapses were constantly happening because I just wasn't used to it kind of again. And the quick kickouts and stuff like that, like nothing really happens quickly in rugby when the ball goes out of play. So you have a bit of time, but in GAA you didn't. And I was caught out a few times and given a bit of a given out to and all that sort of stuff. And there was no easing me into it and that sort of thing.
And where did you finish in that 1K test? I want to know.
Not first anyway, but not last.
Middle of the pack, Hannah.
I was up there, but I wasn't.
Preaching to the choir here. But on that point, and I thought it was fascinating because you touched on it, Andy, on Conor McKenna last week, and we kind of would have watched him closely throughout the championship for Tyrone, and you would have had this. There's just this assumption that if you're coming from a professional background, you're going to be top of the pops. For you coming from rugby, Hannah, for Conor himself coming from Australian rules, really physical games like. But the GAA over the last, even from when me and you started, Andy, you started a little bit before me now, but from our generation, Gaelic football has now just become a game of continuous movement.
Yeah.
Like me and you both, we'd be hiding away in the full forward line, Andy, and maybe 10 years ago, it would be that kickouts were slowed down and they were bombed out long. It didn't really impact the full back of the full forward line. Then Clucko comes along and all of a sudden they're gone in 2 seconds. That brings the full forward and the full backs into it. Then this kind of just up and down the pitch, the blanket defence, playing against that. All of a sudden, like it used to be the midfielders and the half backs. They used to do all the running, the half forwards. Now, over the last 5 or 10 years, Gaelic football has just become a game where for 70 minutes, no matter really where you are on the pitch, like Tyrone are an obvious example of the way they play, and you look at the Dublin Meath game, Hannah, and your role in that final and Vicky Wall for me, just up and down the pitch, it's one of the must be one of the most physically demanding sports, and even though it's still amateur and guys coming in from soccer or rugby or Aussie rules coming in, it does take time to adapt because the physical demands playing in Croke Park for 70. It's so difficult. It's just interesting to hear professional athletes even coming and saying, yeah, it takes time to adapt to that.
Yeah, no, look, I definitely agree. It definitely took me a couple of weeks to kind of get used to it and kind of get back into what I would have felt was my kind of natural way of playing again and making the right decisions with regards to that and stuff. But yeah, look, the fitness element of it is incredible, and it's, you know, particularly the way teams play, as you said, you know, there's no more like forwards are just forwards and backs are just backs. There's complete interchange.
Hey, Andy, if that was the case.
That's why you retired.
Yeah, we'd have dragged the arse out of another 2 or 3 years. Like.
You know, Hannah, you were saying that you had a free summer there and you were wondering what you were going to do. Paddy Andrews can give you good directions.
I'm a travel agent now, Hannah. It was my first year out. It's great. Loving it. Can't believe I stayed on so long.
Yeah, but like, yeah, look, it's just the fitness levels are incredible. And just, I think to be able to get up and down is one thing, but to be able to get up and down the pitch and then still, you know, have an end product at the end of it, or be able to put in that tackle or that pass or that finish and stuff like that is just, it's great to see. And as you said, like Meath were the best team at it this year. Like I couldn't believe how good they were at just all of them getting up and back and up and back. And you know, some say it's because they had a youthful team and this, that, and the other, but it was their drive and their determination to stick to their system, and you know, and the belief that that system will get them over the line. And it was a bit surreal on the day, but you know, they were incredible at it.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.